Yeah,
Nice guy.
somebody you don't play for.
Kids, yeah.
Good morning, my name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this morning's hearing. I want to cover a few points before we begin. First, welcome members of the public. I'm happy that you're here. I look forward to your input on this case. I ask everyone in the room to please take a moment and silence your telephones so that we don't have dings and call melodies during the hearing, and we can focus on the testimony and the evidence. All testimony and evidence that I accept during these hearings must be taken in under oath. Therefore, I will administer the oath to everyone in the room at the conclusion of my remarks here, and we'll proceed. For those of you who are not familiar with this process, all testimony and evidence on every zoning case is presented to the hearing examiner, and we permit you to speak as long as you would like, but we allow you only one opportunity to speak. So I ask that you please organize your thoughts before you come to the podium. When you reach the board hearing, you will only be permitted to speak for 3 minutes. At that point, I urge you to really just hit the bullets of what your concerns are so they don't get the hook out and remove you from the podium. The order of the proceedings will be as follows. We will begin with the applicant, who is represented by attorneys and other experts. They will present the case. They will explain the request and how it is consistent with the Land Development Code and the Lee Plan and the review criteria that pertains to the approval of zoning requests. At the conclusion of their presentation, which may involve more than one witness, we will turn to the county planner that prepared the staff report in this case. The planner is Dirk Danley. He's sitting over here. His presentation will probably be a little shorter than the applicant's presentation. He will hit the high points of his recommendation and explain any specific conditioning that he recommended in this case. After that, I may have questions of both the staff and the applicant, and then following that, I will open up the floor to members of the public. If you haven't already filled out one of these public participation forms, I urge you to do so. Even if you do not intend on speaking on the record, if you provide us with your email address, you will receive a copy of my recommendation in this case, and also further notice of when the final board hearing will be scheduled. I will call the names in this stack one at a time. If someone didn't get an opportunity to fill out a sheet, I'll invite those people to come up to the podium. Once you're at the podium, I ask that you please state your name clearly for the court reporter. You can show us where you live on the map in relationship to the project if you wish. Like I said, you'll be able to speak as long as you like. Please confine your comments to the specific request at hand. If you have any questions, please ask them at that time. They will not be answered immediately. What we will do is we will take down all the questions that are posed by members of the public, and then after we've heard all the questions and we close public input, we'll go back to staff and the applicant, and they will address each of your questions at that time. There'll be no additional further public input after I close the public input portion. If you would like to speak to the planner or the applicant's team after the hearing, please feel free to do so. They may clarify any other questions you may have. One last comment on public input. I often find that people are not completely in favor or against an application, but they have specific concerns. Please share those concerns with us, because you allow us an opportunity to clarify any misunderstandings or craft a condition to address your concern. All right, I'm ready to administer the oath. If you will be speaking on the record, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you give in this hearing will be the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
I do.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the name of this case, and I don't have the right notebook. Hang on a second.
You can read it off the screen.
Maria? Yes. I grabbed the wrong notebook. Can you grab the notebook for this case? Lots of cases going on back there.
Imagine that.
Thank you. This case number is DCI 2021-00049. The name of the project is Bayshore 65 MPD, which means Mixed Plan Development. That means that this project consists of more than one type of use. You will hear the details of this application by the applicant's team when they present the case. And I'm ready to begin.
Thank you very much. Our first witness is Mr. Ron Inge. He has testified here numerous times before, but I realize he does not have a resume on file, so I have provided that to you.
Okay, applicant's 48-hour letter was Exhibit A. This will be Exhibit 1, resume, Ron Inge.
I just wanted to make extra sure you got it.
Yes, thank you. Let me mark it.
And you should have a copy of the PowerPoint, I believe, to your left.
Okay, that will be applicant Exhibit 2.
And we're going to ask Mr. Inge just to briefly go over his experience. He has had extensive experience in terms of the financial side, the development side, interfacing with the public side of development, but I'll let him speak for himself.
Please begin.
Good morning. My name is Ron Inge. I'm here representing Bayshore 65 LLC. A bit of background on me. I have a number of years of experience in the development industry in Southwest Florida, all the counties surrounding Lee County. I've developed industrial parks, 6 Mile Commercial Park, Benchmark Industrial Park, shopping centers, public-anchored shopping centers, residential subdivisions, and I was previously Executive Vice President of Harper Brothers Incorporated, who built a large number of the roadways throughout Lee County, Daniels Road, portions of I-75, US 41, Summerlin Road, Colonial, Bayshore Road even, and was involved in the establishment and permitting of our 3,100 acre mine, and then the subsequent 4,200 acre expansion of that. I've owned and operated 2 separate quarries in Lee County, one a fill and a shell operation in Cape Coral, and another a lime rock and fill operation off of State Road 82. My oversight of those projects is to lead the development team to go through the zoning and permitting process, the construction process, the analysis of the feasibility of the various projects, not necessarily limited to, but including the market analysis, the impacts on the surrounding areas, the financial feasibility of the project, and the impacts of any possible issues on the success and viability of the project. And I've done that over a number of years. I could talk about the subdivisions we've developed, but don't want to spend too much time with that. Heritage Palms was one that comes to mind that you are probably familiar with.
Thank you.
Today, I am fortunate enough to be a member of a team of folks who are going to talk about the Bayshore 65 project. Neil Montgomery, who has spoken previously, our attorney with the Pavis Law Firm, Jennifer Sapin, AICP with Barak & Associates, who...
Can you just slow down just a little bit for me, please?
Excuse me. I was trying to hurry up because I know we're on a time schedule. Sorry.
There is no rush.
Okay. Jennifer Sapin. Neil Montgomery with the Pavis Law Firm, Jennifer Sapin, AICP with Barak & Associates, who will discuss the various aspects of the project, the compliance with the comprehensive plan, the Land Development Code, the site plans, and the issues related thereto. Barrett Staskill with Bear Paws Environmental Consulting, who will also talk about the land cover relative to the project, the vegetation on site, any species that are apparent on the property, and our management plan for the preserve areas going forward. Carl Baracco with Baracco & Associates will talk about road improvements and most importantly, our water management plan and surface water management system to address any concerns relative to zoning, water flows, and what have you. Ted Treesh with TR Transportation will discuss the traffic impacts of our project, how it fits into the road network, the intersections that we tie into, what our access points are, and related items. And I've introduced myself already. But overall, the staff report had a number of items that we reviewed and agree with the majority of the staff report. There were a couple of items that we put forth in our 48-hour letter just for clarification, and that's been tendered to the hearing examiner and to staff. Believe that with the information provided in the staff report and in our 48-hour letter, it would support our request to rezone the 66.5 acre parcel from AG2 to mixed-use plan development to allow for up to 357 residential units, of which 250 would be a maximum single-family residential units, and up to 80,000 square feet of commercial uses. So we'd request that the hearing examiner support the staff recommendation as modified by our 48-hour letter, which I'm sure will be discussed a bit later on. Without further ado, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Jennifer Sapin, but I would like to reserve the ability to speak again before the hearing examiner if an issue comes up that I might need to address either from staff or even our team or the public later on in the hearing. So thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Sapin. I'm an AICP certified land planner with Baracco & Associates.
And you have been accepted here before as an expert in zoning and planning, correct?
Yes, I have, and I would ask to be accepted as such again today.
Please proceed.
We're starting first with an aerial location map. This one is from 2021. You'll see throughout the presentation I show two different years of aerials, 2021 and 2023. 2022 is skipped because the Oak Creek development at that time is just basically kind of a mess and you can't see what's going on. So this will show you the before and after that development. So the project is located on the south side of Bayshore Road, approximately 1 mile east of the I-75 interchange. Here you see the 2023 aerial, and you can see quite a bit of activity has occurred in this region in the 2 years shown in these aerials. North of the project is Oak Creek by Del Webb. It's a Pulte project, and also Seneca. It's a parcel within that project, which I'll show a little closer in other slides. And then you can also see Brightwater east of I-75 has also expanded quite a lot. So comparing the two, there's been quite a bit of development in the area, actualizing the planned developments and approvals that have been approved throughout the years. South of the project is zoned RS1 and AG2, and it's predominantly single-family homes with varying lot sizes. East of the subject property is a commercially zoned parcel along Bayshore Road and a mobile home park. A mobile home park, Pioneer Village, and is zoned MH2. Future land use, the future land use of the subject property is suburban. Per policy 1.1.5, you expect predominantly residential uses in this future land use category, and it provides housing near the more urban areas, but does not provide the full mix of land uses of a more urban area. It allows 6 units per acre at the acreage of the property, allows 399, and this third bullet down here is incorrect, the 330, it should be 357 units requested, and of course the maximum of 250 single-family units. The single-family is limited because that is a higher traffic generator. The 357 units would only be utilized if using multifamily as well as possibly some single-family and two-family attached. The request is consistent with Goal 30 by providing a compact mixed-use development and preservation of natural resources. And the requested residential product mix is consistent with objectives. Ron, can I have a copy of that presentation? The graphic is in the way. The requested residential product mix will provide a range of housing at multiple price points consistent with objectives 30.1, goal 135, and goal 158.
Okay, can I stop you here for a moment for clarification? I see the request is 357 dwelling units
Correct.
with a maximum of 250 single-family
That's correct.
units. But this page of the PowerPoint says that you potentially could build 399 units based on your acreage,
Correct.
but you're going to do 330,
357.
so that's a typo.
That's correct.
Okay, I will leave the written record open, and I will ask that you please provide a replacement page to this PowerPoint, since this is going to accompany the package of exhibits that goes to the board, and I'd like to keep it as clear for them as possible. And we'll just remove this and slip in the replacement page and still treat it as your Exhibit 2.
Understood. Thank you. Apologies for the error.
That's all right.
Looking at the density allocation table within the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, the project is in the North Fort Myers Planning Community, which has ample residential acreage available to serve this site. Compliant with the Land Development Code, a meeting was conducted at the North Fort Myers Planning Community on March 1st, 2022. That was held in the North Fort Myers Recreation Center. That board did recommend approval of this project. Consistent with objective 2.1, policies 2.1.1, 2.1.2, objective 2.2, policy 2.2.1, policy 5.1.3, and water and sewer standards 4.1.1 and 4.1.2. Those standards we demonstrate consistency with those standards through the utility availability letters from Lee County and FGUA. Looking at the surrounding services of the project, public emergency services shown here. The North Fort Myers Fire Station is within 1.5 miles. There's a second Bayshore Fire Station within 1.6 miles. Lee County EMS Station is within 6 miles, and the Lee County Memorial Hospital is within 9 miles of the project. Schools, you see here, are served by 2 elementary schools, 2 middle, and 2 high schools. Distance is all noted here to Bayshore Elementary, Orange River Elementary, Diplomat Middle, Colusa Middle, North Fort Myers High, and Island Coast High. Public parks and facilities are available to serve the site. Public transit, Lee Tran Route 590 is within 1.25 miles. That's located at the Public Shopping Center. It says just a little bit southeast of the site.
Can you point to that on the map for me?
Right there.
That's where the Publix is?
Yes,
And that's the last stop on the line?
I believe so, yeah. Parks and Recreation, the North Fort Myers Community Park is within 4 miles of the site. The Caloosahatchee Creek Preserve, there's 2 of those, one within 1 mile, one within 2.5. There's several other parks listed here: Powell Creek, Bayshore Soccer Complex, Manatee Park, Judd Park, Knoll Grade Park, and North Shore Park. Additionally, there are several opportunities for employment and shopping in the area. Looking at the future land use map, as we mentioned, the subject property is suburban and surrounded by suburban on all sides of the property, with the exception the northeast corner across Bayshore Road. The future land use category there is industrial development. This aligns with our proposed commercial parcel, which is on the south side of Bayshore Road. And as you look at Bayshore Road, it increases intensity as you get to general interchange at the I-75 access. This property has been suburban for quite some time. You can see the red star on the map here. The 1987 future land use map showed it as suburban, as did the 1991 future land use map. So this area has been intended for suburban and more intense development since the inception of the future land use map. project aerial, and again, we're looking at the 2021 aerial, just so you can kind of see the before conditions. The project abuts Samville Road on the southern and eastern boundaries of the project, and the entire north and west end of the project then abuts Bayshore Road. In the southeast corner of the project, there is an FDOT detention pond. That pond separates the proposed development from Samville Road. And north of Bayshore Road is Oak Creek, Del Webb by Oak Creek. And this was the Chapel Creek, Oak Creek, and then also the Bayshore 57, 3 different plan developments that were merged together into a large master plan development. Existing features of the site, Barrett will get into the environmental aspects. There's a wetland on site. And on the east side of the property, Chapel Creek bisects. You can see where Chapel Creek feeds from the project Del Webb on the north side of Bayshore. And it feeds, crosses Bayshore Road, and then runs through the project and along the west side of the FDOT pond. Looking now at the 2023 aerial, you can see the development that has occurred in Del Webb. Oak Creek by Del Webb, which is further up to the north, is predominantly a single-family development with a couple of ranging lot sizes as small as 45 feet and 42 feet. Seneca is a multifamily project. It's a single-story multifamily. It is not fee simple. It is a 55 and up rental community. And then you can see the CPD, which is undeveloped at this time, but entitled with commercial uses. And yes.
Okay, so I see Seneca, and then I cross the entrance road from Seneca, I see more cleared land. Is that part of the Oak Creek?
Correct, yes. So the southern area in here was Chapel Creek. Up here was Oak Creek RPD. And then here is Bayshore 57 MPD.
And you're saying that will be incorporated into this greater project here, the Oak Creek portion?
That's correct. That's correct. Administrative amendments have been approved for the Chapel Creek project as well as the Bayshore 57 project.
They'll be interconnected.
To allow, correct, to allow an interconnection. A road connects through here, and then this Del Webb project has 2 access points, one on Bayshore Road and then a second one down here on Samville Road. So the proposed development aligns the access with this project.
Can you go back just a second? Can you, for the record, tell us what those big buildings are to the east of the CPD?
This property right here is has an industrial future land use. I believe it's an IPD zoning, and that's Raymond Lumber, very large industrial, pretty active, noisy, and then that is followed by the railroad. So it's pretty noisy and intense industrial type uses east of the Del.
And then what's further to the east, north of Bayshore?
More single-family lots along this side, and then on the north side of Bayshore. On the south side of Bayshore, there's a Love's truck stop and a few different commercial plan developments.
And what is the commercial there north of Mill Loop Road? What is that?
That is Mary Lou's, is that, I have it on one of my slides, Mary Lou's Bait and, tackle. Western wear, yeah, it's a retail shop for Western wear.
I never noticed it. I've been by there. I went by there before this hearing, and I didn't even notice that. Okay.
It's tucked in. Her shop is here, and there's some outdoor storage and different uses going on right at the corner. Truck storage. So looking then at compatibility with these surrounding uses, the Land Development Code defines compatibility as the relationship between 2 land uses. We look at the similarity of their characteristics, and we look to see if there's a relative lack of conflict. So consistent with Goals 5, Objective 5.1, and Policies 5.1.5 and 5.1.10, the proposed development is consistent and compatible with the surrounding development through transitions. We're looking here at the developments and densities throughout this area. Areas that are not colored in are the lower densities agricultural RS1 type districts. And you'll see those at the bottom of the table. Those are lower densities. The yellow is the proposed Bayshore 65 density at the suburban future land use rate. So you can see, while we are not the highest, we're not the lowest, but we're in the range with what we're seeing in this area. Looking then at the lot sizes and product types themselves, comparing to the approved plan developments, we're looking at Oak Creek, Chapel Creek, Gully Creek, and comparing, and Bayshore 57, which again, Oak Creek, Chapel Creek, and Bayshore 57 are that combined Del Webb project. You see many of the lot sizes are the same as what is proposed. Bayshore 65, the green are the cells in which the proposed Bayshore 65 match the existing approvals. So you can see a single family lot width of 42 feet and the depth of 100 is fairly common in the area. And the types of uses that are approved, single family, two family attached, townhouse, and multifamily are proposed for this development as well as approved for the surrounding area. And again, what we are looking for here is whether our proposal, whether there is a relationship between the two land uses, what we are proposing and what's existing, whether they have similar characteristics, and whether there is a relative lack of conflict between the uses. Looking at the lack of conflict, we'll look now at the master concept plan. First, master concept plan A. There are two different concept plans. The difference between them is in the residential area. Master concept plan A has 3 development pods. Chapel Creek divides the project, so commercial is on the east side. You see it here shown purple. The R1 and R2 allow different uses. R1 allows multifamily and ALF, and it's more intense density expected. R2 is the lower density with only single family and two family attached. This creates that compatibility and transition. The proposed multifamily is against the multifamily that is under construction right now in Seneca and Del Webb. The R2 with the two family attached and single family will create that compatibility and transition to the single family to the south. This plan proposes 3 access points and 1 interconnection between the pods. That's a deviation which I'll get into. There are 2 preserve areas. The eastern one is along Chapel Creek and expands that natural area, and the western one is around the existing wetland and buffers Bayshore Road. Again, looking at the compatibility through the transition, single family and two family along Samville provides this transition between higher density multifamily under construction, Seneca, and the single family to the south, which you can see here on the aerial and the master concept plan. I have provided in the PowerPoint just a black and white version of each of the master concept plans in case we need to reference them. But this presentation breaks apart the components inside this plan. Looking at the second master concept plan, this is 2 development pods. The major difference here is the residential is interconnected in this plan. So the residents here would be able to go from the north or to the south for access points. Again, Chapel Creek continues to divide and separate the commercial parcel. And the uses proposed in here, while the pod is interconnected, the uses still provide a transition because, again, only single family and two family are allowed along Samville Road, abutting those existing single family residents. 3 access points again, and the preserve for Master Concept Plan B and A are identical.
And there's no change in the commercial pods between the two?
Correct. Correct. Both commercial have the same details.
And all residential types are available in A or B, and in both A or B, the southernmost boundary is restricted to single-family traditional and two-family attached, or what's that product called?
Yeah, that's two family attached. That's correct. Basically, it's a fee simple duplex, 2 separate owners.
Right.
This slide here looks at the landscape buffers. A lot of the buffer around the perimeter shown green is provided by the preservation, which this meets a lot of the goals with the county and the land development code for buffering development. The type D buffer, which is provided along Samville Road, is shown orange. That is a 15-foot wide buffer. It's over 3,000 linear feet, which would provide 160 trees. And the type D buffer along Bayshore Road is over 2,000 feet and would provide 145 trees. Both of those roadway buffers also require a staggered double hedge. Looking a little closer at the commercial parcel, it's roughly 7 acres. It's again shown here in purple. We are providing in both of the master concept plans 2 layouts for the commercial development. On the left, you could see where we were anticipating a reverse frontage road. It may or may not be platted into individual tracts as shown on the left, or it potentially could be developed with a single developer, a single parcel. And so we wanted to show that, and that would be an option where also that we have the potential of expanding those lakes there, providing a little more on-site fill material for the commercial developer. Looking at policy 6.1.4, the commercial is compatible with adjacent existing proposed land uses. It abuts CG on the east side of Samville Road. There it is, Mary Lou's Feed and Tack Shop. IPD on the north side of Bayshore Road, Raymond Lumber, and near future Chapel Creek CPD, which is north of Bayshore Road. Consistent with policy 6.1.7, which prohibits commercial in a way that opens up new areas to premature development. The existing infrastructure for this commercial development is in place, and the surrounding densities will support the commercial use. Open space, there are separate requirements for residential and commercial. The top map, you can see here how we split up the acreage for each of those uses. Residential providing the land development code required 40%, and commercial providing the 30% required. You can see on the map, the dark green would represent the preserve serving the residential requirements, and the light green would serve the indigenous requirements for the commercial area. Looking at the indigenous, which is required per Land Development Code 10415B, we have provided and met that minimum requirement using the incentive credits allowed by Land Development Code 10415B3. That code allows, in this black table on the right, it allows indigenous credits depending on where the indigenous is located and the size of the indigenous. We have applied, you'll see 3 areas, areas A, C, and E. All 3 of those have applied incentive credits. They are over 1 acre, half acre, and 3 acre, and they abut roads and waterways. And that additional 10%, in addition to this table here, is if you abut existing waterways or roadways. While it does not qualify for indigenous, I do want to talk a little bit about the Chapel Creek natural system, because we do believe it is very beneficial. The photo here on the left, this is on Bayshore Road on the north side of the creek looking south. You can see there's an open waterway. There's several mature trees around this creek, and the trees overhang the creek. So the water itself does not count towards indigenous requirements, which the water itself is 1.4 acres. But by bisecting the creek also disqualifies the entire system to be combined and looked at from the incentive program, so we don't get the actualization of that incentive program for the whole creek system. If we were to count the creek as one whole system, we would increase incentive credits from 6.6 up to 11.2. So we wanted to point this out because while the proposed MPD does only meet the minimum indigenous requirements, it would exceed this requirement by 5 acres if the creek was considered part of the indigenous flowway system. Keeping the view at the creek, looking at the drainage easements, There is one existing easement and one proposed easement along this creek. The FDOT has a 100-foot wide easement on the north side of the creek. Per Condition 8, we will dedicate this to Lee County during the development order process. And the creek is located, which you can kind of see in this slide, the water of the creek is located on the east side of the FDOT easement, with the upland side is on the the west side of the easement. That provides access and maintenance for FDOT to that creek. South of the creek, there is a new easement that will be added. We are proposing a Lee County easement that will extend 20 feet beyond top of bank. This allows the county the right to access, but does not require the obligation to maintain the flowway, as stated in staff's Condition 8. And this is consistent with Land Development Code 10328A. And this also pulls us into the first deviation. I'm going to bounce around in deviations as the numbers won't be in sequential order, but I'll wrap it up in a summary so you can see them all together. So keeping with the creek, deviation 7 is from 10416D9, which requires a 50-foot wide natural water buffer on both sides of the creek, and that's to allow no water buffer on the FDOT side. In fact, we do plan to retain the indigenous vegetation. Of course, we're required to remove the exotics, but we have no intention on removing the vegetation. But because the FDOT could clear in that area, a deviation was needed to keep the master concept plan compliant with Land Development Code standards. Switching now to Samville Road, on the improvements proposed, we have two areas where we're proposing improvements to Samville. In each area, it is from our access points to Bayshore Road. Looking first at the north commercial area, there's 335 feet of improvements. As you see in the cross section in the bottom left, we're adding a 5-foot sidewalk and some extending the pavement to meet that 11-foot travel width and the unpaved shoulders you see here.
So this is along the eastern boundary of the property?
That's correct. Yeah, it's correct. It's from the commercial access on the eastern boundary, where Samville is a local road in that location, and then going north to Bayshore Road. And then the second one is in the southeast entry, shown here. This access point where you see the pink arrow, that aligns with Hartwig Lane. And from there, then going west to Bayshore Road along Samville, where it is a collector road, there would be 785 feet of improvements with a sidewalk added and a pavement and shoulders shown here. These improvements do comply with Land Development Code 10219, which highlighted here. You can see the improvements as necessary must extend from the project's access points to the point at which the street connects to a county road. We have a few deviations on the design of the Samville roadway. The deviation 8 here, which requires a 6-foot sidewalk, we're proposing a 5-foot sidewalk. This comes up in the Land Development Code in this section. Commercial and residential have different sidewalk widths required. So we are proposing a 5-foot sidewalk on both of the cross sections to keep that cross section consistent on Samville. And also, other than the proposed commercial and the CG across the street, all the other uses in the area are residential. So we're seeking to keep that same 5-foot sidewalk along Samville. Deviations 9 and 10, which require a 4-foot and 5-foot paved shoulder to provide a sidewalk and no paved shoulder. As you see here, we are providing an 8-foot unpaved shoulder, and Carl Baracco will be going over these cross sections in a little more detail, but I wanted to outline which deviations are applying to the sections. Deviations 1 and 2 are from section 10329, which require a 50-foot excavation setback. The request is to allow a 30-foot excavation setback. Deviation 1 applies where the lakes abut a collector or arterial right-of-way, Deviation 2 is where it is of a different ownership, in this case, the FDOT pond. And the reduction in this excavation setback allows the lakes to be larger and generate more on-site fill material for the development. As you see in the slide, Master Concept Plan 3 applies these deviations in 3 locations, and A in 3 locations and B in 2 locations. And a type D buffer will be provided to protect wayward vehicles, which is 15 feet wide, 5 trees per 100 linear feet, and a double staggered hedge. Looking at deviation 1, which you see here on Master Concept Plan A, there's 1 lake along Bayshore Road, and there's 1 lake along Sandville Road. Well, there's 2 lakes along Sandville Road, but this deviation only applies where Sandville is a collector, not where Sandville is a local. So it only applies to the south, the southwest lake, and not the eastern lake. And as a detail for deviation 1 shows on page 3 of the Master Concept Plan, page 4 of the Master Concept Plan, plantings will be provided on the exterior wall as required by Land Development Code if a fence or wall is utilized. Deviation 2 applies where the lake abuts the existing FDOT pond. You see here the commercial development has its own lake, and then it abuts the FDOT pond. There will be 50 feet, in addition to the landscaping, there's 50 feet between the lake. There's a fence around the FDOT pond. There's 50 feet between that fence and the proposed lake, so that'll allow plenty of room for FDOT to do their maintenance as well as the subject property. Deviations 3 through 5, you have seen these before in several different projects. All 3 are related to doing these small dead ends. Deviation 3 requires that lot lines be at right angles to the road. This is to allow this, which is a side lot line, to be parallel with the road rather than at a right angle to the road. Deviation 4 requires cul-de-sacs for dead ends. As allowed by the Florida Fire Code, we are requesting deviation to allow a dead end without a cul-de-sac, so long as the deviation is no longer than or the road is no longer than 150 feet. And deviation 5, is regarding lot measurement. Because of the uniqueness of the shape of these lots, there's some ambiguity on how to measure which is the side lot line, which is the front lot line. So we've provided this detail. And you see in the image up here, this is a lot where this has been utilized. This is Camden Square, which was Plantation 37 RPD. And again, we have had this deviation approved in several plan developments in Lee County, and they have been constructed. And they've been utilized without experiencing any negative public safety. And this does create a unique lot at the end and several unique lots for the dead end road. These lots are premium lots that the builder gets a higher price for with the low traffic on those small dead ends. The project is benefited also by reducing the land allocation that would be needed for the larger cul-de-sac and slightly reduces the impervious area. Deviation 6, residential developments of more than 5 acres have to have more than 1 access point. While our residential project, Master Concept Plan A, shown here, does have 2 access points, it was staff's interpretation that because of the lake separating the 2, each functioned independently with a single access point. So we have requested this deviation and are providing a stabilized emergency access shown dashed here on the plan. And again, this, as the slide notes, this applies only to Master Concept Plan A because B is interconnected and has clearly 2 access points to the residential. Looking at the stabilized path, we are proposing it to be 12 feet wide, and it will allow that emergency connection. And the approval will allow these 2 distinct residential pods, which create that transition in density. We did meet with the North Fort Myers Fire Department, and we spoke with the Sheriff's Department representative, and we have received letters of no objection for these deviations from both of those entities. So I wanted to go through the deviations just because I bounced around to recall 1 and 2 are the excavation setback, The 3 through 5 are dead-end roads and the cul-de-sac and the measurement. Deviation 6 was for that single access we just talked about with that emergency interconnection. Deviation 7 was to not require trees to be buffering along the creek for 50 feet, just for those within the FDOT easement. But again, we have no intention on clearing those trees. And then deviations 8 through 10 were related to Samville Road improvements. So in conclusion, I agree with staff findings and recommendations of approval, including their staff finding for section 34-145, that the proposed request complies with the Lee plan, meets the land development code, is compatible with existing and planned uses, will provide sufficient access. The expected impacts on transportation facilities will be addressed by existing county regulations and conditions of approval, which Ted Treesh is here and we'll go over traffic in a little bit, will not adversely affect environmental critical areas, and will be served by urban services. Additionally, the proposed request is compatible with existing or planned uses, will not adversely affect environmental critical areas, and urban services are available and adequate. That concludes my presentation, but I am available if you have questions.
I have a couple before
Yes.
the hearing examiner goes. You did a great job of showing the history of the suburban future land use category. On the current version, or your aerial, you can see the width of Bayshore Road. Do you know if Bayshore was only a 2-lane road in 1984 when the original map was done?
Well, so I know that Bayshore Road was improved. It was several years ago, probably a dozen or so years ago, from some narrower point. But I mean, the Bayshore Road actually didn't always even go here. So Bayshore Road used to come down here. So this area was always anticipated for higher density.
Thank you. Deviation 7, the slide said section 10-291, and I think when you spoke, you transposed it to 10-219. Just want, in the hearing examiner wanting the record to be correct, I just want you to maybe add, just make sure.
Make sure we're saying the right one.
Maybe it's not that slide.
Oh,
It's in the deviations anyway. It was, what was on the slide said sections 10-291, and when you,
oh, that's the access.
but then when you testified, it was 10-219. So I just want to make sure which one's the right one.
Deviation 6.
Sorry.
Yeah, that with the single point of access, developments more than 5 acres, residential requiring 2 access points. That is Land Development Code Section 10-2913.
Okay, thank you. Well, and you also mentioned Camden Square in regards to some of the deviations, but Camden Square also has stabilized emergency access.
That's correct, yes.
So if you wanted to see a live and in-person example, that project has that as well.
Correct, yeah. And that is constructed and was development order permitted with that emergency stabilized access.
Thank you.
I have no questions, staff. I'm ready for the next witness.
Next, we have Barrett to go over environmental considerations.
Good morning. Barrett Stacey, Bear Paws Environmental Consultant. I'm here to discuss the any sort of environmental portions
Your
of the
resume on
site.
file,
Yes, ma'am.
you've been previously accepted,
Yes, ma'am.
and you have to be accepted as an expert again today.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. Here's an example. Here's a map of my flux map, which is the vegetation communities on site. There's a wetland in the north central portion of the site, right here. This wetland is being preserved, and there is a buffer around the entire wetland. There is an OSW that Jen discussed over here that is also being preserved and not impacted. There will be no impacts to any wetlands or other surface waters on site, including the creek.
What's OSW stand for?
Other surface water. This is a map of the gopher tortoise that were observed on site during one of the numerous inspections that were conducted. As you can see, a bunch of them cluster over here along the creek. That is located within the preserve area. A majority of them are located within the preserve area. There are some scattered ones outside of the creek within the uplands of the site. Any gopher tortoise that are located within the preserve areas will be left undisturbed. Any gopher tortoise located outside of preserve areas will be relocated off-site to a recipient site per FWC permits. There were no other species identified on site. Numerous site inspections have been conducted, and gopher tortoise were the only ones. Last but not least, the preserve management plan. We have a preserve management plan that's been submitted. We are preserving, as I discussed, the wetland and an associated upland buffer. Also, another buffer along Bayshore Road. There's also this area over here, as Jen previously mentioned as well, that is also being included as a preserve. What Jen mentioned previously, a portion of this is not being included in the indigenous calculations because it is part of an FDOT easement, so that we will not get credit for that, but it still is being preserved. That's all I have environmentally. Any questions?
No, thank you. No questions.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, I'm Carl Baracco. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Florida. I've been accepted as an expert witness in civil engineering in this venue in the past, and my resume is on file.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'm going to cover three topics: water management, the improvements to Sandville Road, and utilities. First, I'll start with water management. This project is atypical in the sense that at this point, generally, projects do not have any drainage permits from the state of Florida. In this particular case, the South Florida Water Management District has issued an environmental resource permit dated September 22nd of 2022. That is permit number 36-107261-P. When the Water Management District does the review, they generally investigate three topics: water quality, water quantity, and environmental components. You've heard Mr. Statesville talk about the environmental components. I'm going to talk about the water quality and water quantity. Specifically, on page 2 of the permit, I think it's very important to point out that the permit states that issuance of this permit constitutes certification of compliance with state water quality standards in accordance with the state's rule. Also on page 3, the permit states the project's discharge will not cause or contribute to violations of state water quality standards. Next, I'd like to go over the conveyance and the drainage flowways associated with the project. And I'm going to talk about the major component first, which is the Chapel Creek branch. On the north side of State Road 78, there is an existing triple 6-foot by 10-foot box culvert which passes water from north to south, enters the Chapel Creek branch on the south side, which bisects the project. And then the water, and that's these large blue arrows, continues south and discharges south below Samville Road at an existing quadruple 5-foot by 10-foot box culvert. I'd like to point out that the project includes 2 controlled discharge points into the Chapel Creek branch, as I'm showing here, and 1 discharge point, which I'm not showing on this slide, but it's here in the corner to the west. All of this flow continues south into the Clusatchee River. Again, there are 2 outfalls to the creek. This is one control structure from the commercial area discharging to the Chapel Creek branch, and another here on the west side discharging to the Chapel Creek from the residential. Also, the 3rd discharge point is from the residential portion to the west into the Samville roadside swale. While we're here, I would point out that there is another minor conveyance, and which I didn't show on the major conveyance slide, and it's got a 24 by 36 elliptical pipe and a 24-inch pipe, both passing under Bayshore Road into the wetland. And then in the existing condition, that wetland sheet flows to the south into Samville. In the proposed condition, there's a box culvert, a control structure here at the edge of the wetland, which maintains the water surface elevation for the wetland, and then discharges that water to the south, again into the Samville roadside swale via a 42-inch concrete pipe. The last thing I'd like to point out is on this slide, the interaction between the wetland and the Chapel Creek branch is unaffected and will remain as it is today. The next 2 slides involve 2 conditions, and they were both subject to the 48-hour letter. I think it's important to point out that, again, the water management permit, the ERP, includes certification of compliance with state water quality standards. And at this point, I'd like to say that all the evidence and analysis thus far, including the findings of the Water Management District, indicate that there will be no water quality concerns with the proposed system. In fact, the Water Management District record through a nutrient loading analysis indicates that water quality leaving the site in the post-development condition will be an improvement relative to existing conditions and existing discharge.
So that's the basis for the assertion in the 48-hour letter that conditions 6 and 7 are unnecessary.
That's the basis for condition 6, is that there's no water quality issue, so it would be meaningless to have any monitoring of the water quality.
And that's in comparison to other cases where the water quality is shown to be impaired at the beginning?
I think it would be in a case where there was some indication that there were concerns with water quality. In this particular case, there are no concerns with water quality in the post condition.
I know on the east side of Bayshore Road, there has been situations where the water is already impaired that's coming onto the property. And then these conditions are put into effect. So you're distinguishing this case from those cases by saying existing conditions do not reflect impaired waterways.
Let me just say that if you look at the water management permit, it says that the downstream water is impaired for nutrients only, and the analysis and review of this system indicates that the discharge from the site relative to nutrients will be in improved condition. So there's a net improvement with regard to the impaired waters in the receiving body.
I'd like to do a follow-up to that if I could. The staff memo indicates that the basin is impaired for E. coli. What generates E. coli typically?
Typically livestock and that sort of
Septic
animal.
tanks?
Septic tanks, yes.
Is this project going to be permitted to have septic tanks?
This project will be served both by central water and central sewer. So there will be no septic tanks.
Is this project under any obligation to fix someone else's impairment caused by their livestock or septic tanks? Or are we
No.
only required to address water quality being generated by this site?
No,
We're only required to do it generated by this site, correct?
correct. And again, the discharge from this site shows a net improvement.
And is the water that's generated off-site being taken into the project water management system, or is it separated?
The off-site water in both the major and minor conveyance that I went through earlier remains separate from the water from this site.
So whatever's happening with someone else's water, we're not helping it and we're not hurting it.
Correct. We are helping and improving the discharge from the water from this particular site. Everything else remains unchanged.
Okay, thank you.
Is it okay if I ask a question on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you go back to the MCP or the site plan that showed the conveyance crossing Bayshore on the west side there? You had the right slide before. Just to be clear, the crossing under Bayshore Road into the wetlands, none of that interacts with the drainage from the residential uses.
Correct. And to review both of them, the water from the north passes south in these two pipes that I mentioned into this wetland, and then that water, when it reaches a certain elevation, will enter this structure and will be conveyed to the south into the Sandville.
And is that wetland part of the 7.7 acre feet of water quality treatment?
No, that wetland is independent.
Does the wetland provide water quality treatment? In other words, it absorbs nutrients?
In a natural state?
Yes.
And so while we're talking about that, the same thing holds true with the major conveyance. There's no interaction of the off-site flows through from north to south. The only interaction is the discharge from the commercial and the residential into that.
If you know, the property to the north is the Del Webb, Oak Creek, Chapel Creek, Bayshore 57.
Yes.
Did your firm work on that project?
Yes, we did.
Did you obtain an ERP with state water quality certification
Yes.
so that the water coming from Del Webb project meets the state water quality standards and has certification, and that water is what's being discharged under the road into the wetland?
That and other water coming from the south, north of that project, yes.
I'm sorry, we all interrupted you, so you.
As a condition of the development order, I know developers are required to remove exotic vegetation from the site. Would that include that wetland that's on the property?
I believe so, but it may be more appropriate for Mr. Statescold to answer that question.
You can continue.
Thank you. So now moving on to condition 7, and that is relative to conveyance. And as we said, the off-site flows traveling through Chapel Creek, and that conveyance is an FDOT conveyance. And the proposed development is not altering the conveyance in any way. As a matter of fact, before construction, the Florida Department of Transportation will require a drainage connection permit, which will include a review of 36 different storm events. That permit must be in place before any construction begins. So it's very clear, I think, that there will be no interruption of conveyance in the pass-throughs, both the minor and the major.
Let me just ask you a question on this topic while we're here. The condition says, prior to the issuance of local development order, supporting drainage calculations must be provided to demonstrate that the proposed development will not decrease the conveyance capacity of off-site flows. And so if I understand your testimony in my simple language, we're not changing anything, therefore there's nothing to analyze.
Correct, and I think the Land Development Code also states in 10-291, I believe, that the issuance of an environmental resource permit from the state of Florida considers the requirements of the Land Development Code satisfied, with the exception of the control elevation and one other item that I can't recall off the top of my head.
Not 291 though, is it? Just 291 has to do with,
Yeah, I think it's 10-329. I was
That's
just writing
it.
a
I'm
note to
sorry.
Jennifer.
Thank you.
so this is the basis for the recommendation in the 48-hour letter to delete condition 7.
This and the environmental resource permit, which again, that when the state reviews that permit, they review all of the conveyances, yes.
Okay. I haven't received a response to that 48-hour letter from staff, so I imagine we'll wait to hear what they have to say in the hearing.
Jennifer mentioned the Sandville Road improvements, and I'll go through them in a bit more detail. During the public information hearing that was mentioned earlier, I did hear concerns about the width of Sandville Road, so we took another visit out there and did find that Sandville Road is narrower than county standards. So what we proposed is adding 2 feet of pavement to each side of Sandville Road, which would provide 2 11-foot lanes, and also providing the 5-foot sidewalk.
And that is to your project entrance?
Yes, ma'am. It's from each project entrance to Bayshore, where the exiting traffic would take Sandville to Bayshore.
Whoa, we're
Okay,
not gonna.
public, you'll have an opportunity to speak and ask questions during public input, and all the consultants will remain in the room, and when we go back to the applicant, they will address those in particular. But if you heard it and you want to cover it, go ahead.
I will say that the Land Development Code requires the roadway from the project entrance to the intersecting street to be to county standards. That's exactly what this does.
Okay, so does it like start at the driveway, or does it include a little portion?
No, it actually up here, this shows 335 feet approximately from of Sandville Road would be improved in one direction, and down here 765 feet in another direction, both connecting the project entrances to Bayshore.
Right, so both roads will be 2 feet wider from the project entrance to Bayshore,
Actually, 4 feet wider where needed, 2 feet on each side.
2 per lane.
Yes.
And that includes a 5-foot sidewalk.
Yes, and a stabilized shoulder where the sidewalk, on the side the sidewalk is.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay? And again, these improvements are consistent with the Land Development Code. And the last thing I'll talk about are the utilities. You'll see here that both FGUA and Lee County Utilities have provided letters of availability. I would also state that Lee County Utilities has an existing 24-inch water main on the south side of Bayshore Road, and FGUA has a 8-inch force main on the south side. I'm sorry, on the north side.
So all the dwellings within this project will be serviced by,
Yes, everything in the proposed project would be served by Lee County Utilities and FGUA from existing infrastructure in the State Road 78 right-of-way.
including the commercial portion of the project?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Okay, before we go to Ted Treesh, is Ted Treesh here?
We're going to have Barrett come and answer your question about exotics in the wetlands, if that's okay.
Sure.
Be very brief. Yes, ma'am. The exotics within the wetland will be treated and removed.
Okay. Thank you
Yes, ma'am.
for that clarification. So that should improve the water quality treatment?
Yes, ma'am, it should.
And is there any replanting requirement?
I don't believe we proposed any replantings. There was not a ton of exotics in that area, so I don't think it met that threshold for a replanting. There should be plenty of natural recruitment growing in that'll take over any open to bare areas once those exotics are removed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Hearing Examiner, since you asked that question, I would also add that removal of the exotics will improve the conveyance in both the major and minor.
Thank you. Two things I want to address right now before we go to Ted. And I understand the staff report is prepared 2+ weeks prior to the hearing, but the agricultural use affidavit was incomplete. It was not executed. It didn't include an exhibit showing the areas that are subject to the exemption. And since we typically attach that to the resolution, the final resolution, if the record could be supplemented with an executed copy of the affidavit, that will, if that can happen quickly after hearing, that will enable me to complete this project quicker rather than having to wait. And then with regard to the environmental consultant and the gopher tortoise protection conditions, I have a question, but I think I'm going to wait until I hear staff's presentation.
Okay.
So that I can ask the staff's expert and the applicant's expert regarding the wording of this condition.
Okay.
I'm ready
So
for
the two
Ms.
things that we need right now is the replacement page 8 and the executed ag affidavit with the attachments.
Right, and like I say, I understand this report has to be sent to me, you know, in advance, and it's probably floating out there somewhere, but we need it if you want to keep the agricultural condition in the resolution. If we're not keeping it, then it's not necessary.
We think there might be a couple other things we need to just adjust in the PowerPoint, so we'll send you the corrected pages. Thank you.
You know, you can just send me a replacement PowerPoint. That might be less confusing, and we will replace that with the one you provided.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Good morning, Ted Shreesh with TR Transportation Consultants. We prepared the traffic analysis as part of this application. The study looked at the impacts on the network as part of the trip generation for 250 single-family dwelling units, the 107 multifamily dwelling units, and then 80,000 square feet of commercial retail uses.
So that represents the maximum development?
That's the maximum intensity based on the requested uses. And I would note the 80,000 square feet of commercial uses, we looked at the most intense uses based on the schedule of uses that are attached to the request. The schedule of uses included a food store, so the trip generation is based on a commercial use with a grocery store included. And I would note in the ITE trip generation, in the 11th edition, they've kind of broken out the retail trip generation category in the ITE land use categories with the ITE 11th edition for the retail, and they've separated, they actually have a trip generation for the retail with a grocery store, and it is a very intense trip generation for the retail category. And I will tell you that if you look at the master concept plan for this project, I don't know if I could just go back to an MCP.
While you're looking for it,
There.
the older editions of IT just had 820, you just.
Just had an 820 shopping center land use. There's now multiple shopping center land use codes based on size. There's 0 to 40,000, 40 to 115, and then a larger shopping center land use. But if you look at the access for this commercial piece, We just have one access on to Sandville Road for the commercial. We did meet, when we initially started this project, our first meeting was with FDOT, because obviously we have a large amount of frontage on State Route 78, which is this isn't that's not a master concept plan, that's Barrett's. FDOT controls the main access, the main corridor along the frontage of this parcel. And we initially had 3 access drives requested to this piece. Initially, we had an access request at this location for the residential, the main access here opposite the Oak Creek. There's a median opening here. Let me try and go back to an aerial photo if I can. I know there's one here. I guess we'll go here. We had one here requested. The median opening here is where the Oak Creek, you can see the Oak Creek access is built. And then we were asking for the access for the commercial at this median opening that currently serves the, this is the Raymond Lumber Supply, that's right. We were asking for an access onto State Route 78 opposite the Raymond Lumber median opening. And FDOT, because the access management classification on State Route 78 would only provide us access opposite this median opening at this location. They said we could not have access here and we could not have an access here due to the proximity of the intersection of Sandville Road at this location. So we're at the whim of FDOT in terms of connections to State Route 78, and then that went into the development of the master concept plan as you see it presented here today in terms of our access to the residential portion of the project and as well as the commercial. And I would submit to you that the likelihood of a grocery store being developed on this parcel is slim to none. If you go to any Publix anchored or Winn-Dixie anchored shopping center, they have multiple access drives, usually at a signalized intersection. If you go to a Publix anchored center, if you go down the street at Slater Road, there's a signal at Slater. You go to Winn-Dixie further down the street, there's a signal at that intersection where Winn-Dixie is. Most of those food anchored shopping centers are at a traffic signal with multiple driveways for their larger trucks to be able to get into and out of those larger centers. So, but again, at a zoning level, 30,000 foot view for a traffic study, we have to look at the worst case analysis from a trip generation standpoint. So that's what we've done at this standpoint. As we get further along in the process, once we get past zoning and the site goes to a development order process, if and when retailers come into this project at this corner lot, most likely it'll be a lower level, maybe a medical office or professional office building. Another traffic study will be done that'll estimate the trip generation for those uses. And trip generation will be done, and we'll have to look at turning movements, et cetera, at that point, again, at the time of development order. But at this point, we had to look at the most intense uses for this project, and that included 80,000 square feet of commercial uses as a grocery anchored shopping center. With that, we looked at the level of service, and again, this traffic study was dated actually back in 21, so it took a little time to get here. I did update the level service analysis. The county has published some new data since then, so I did update table 2A from the level service analysis, and I'd like to provide that to the hearing examiner this morning and staff just to update it with the new numbers, so you have that. It didn't change the results of the analysis. It just has the updated numbers in it. It still shows Bayshore Road will operate at a level service C. I went out a couple more years For the build-out, I went out to 2028. The original traffic study that's in your packet, I believe, only went to, I think, 2026. So we're now already in 2023. So I went out a few more years to look at a build-out year a little further out. So we're still looking at a level service C on Bayshore Road. So we meet the standards in terms of build-out for meeting the requirements of the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. Again, as we get towards development order for the project, we'll look at turn lane improvements if we need to be done at the intersections. As Carl indicated, Sandville will be widened from the access drive location at this location to Bayshore Road. So approximately at this location, we'll be improving Sandville, and then the commercial drive at this location up to Bayshore Road. And then we're working with FDOT for turn lane improvements. There's already a left turn lane on Bayshore heading westbound, and then we'll be constructing probably a right turn lane as you're heading eastbound into that side access drive that'll serve the main residential portion of the project. So again, the most intense uses have been analyzed. Level service C at build-out on Bayshore. Commercial uses, again, the most intense uses have been analyzed. The ultimate build-out, just because of the access configuration that exists, will most likely be much less intense use than what we've analyzed. And again, based on the what's along that corridor in that area, there's no traffic signal at Sandville. There won't be a traffic signal there. That's a directionalized median opening. You're only allowed to turn left in from westbound State Route 78 onto Sandville. This intersection of Sandville is a full median opening. And then again, we have the full median opening on State Route 78 opposite Oak Creek at this location. So that concludes my comments, and be more than happy to, the staff report included an attachment from staff. We're in agreement with those comments that basically summarized in attachment N, and be more than happy to answer any questions.
I have no questions. Dirk? Thank you. Are there any further witnesses on behalf of the applicant?
No, blank.
I'm looking at Jennifer because I didn't know if she had any conclusion. No, ma'am, not at this time. We do reserve the right for rebuttal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a 10-minute break. Allow everyone to stretch their legs and the court reporter to rest her hands. We will resume at 20 minutes to 11 with the staff's presentation. Thank you. You're welcome. Worked out.
Yes, yeah.
That's what they asked me.
So your mom, the Eagle has landed. We're working out.
Yes, I'm a little slow getting my workout.
Same right here. These are the ones I saw that wanted to change.
Oh, yeah, I saw them. I agree.
When I saw this,
I know. And and this morning I was like, you know what? And it was a last minute thing. I was like, you know what? Sometimes we have these graphics, we don't have the actual MCP. And I had done an image a long time ago. Not a PDF, but an image, because you can't put PDFs in it.
She does.
well, we'll need to update this.
Right. Well, yeah, my guess is she'll want to get rid of that just
Yeah, it's
for
a southwest
confusion.
entrance or east. It's really
Yeah.
southwest entrance,
Right.
so it just.
Well, it's confusing when you have more than one thing, and replacing one page is harder than a brand new one with a new date on it.
So she dad used to. So, and of course, she makes a lot of, even though we can't, well, he gets the buys. I wanna make money if I'm building too, but what about the little fake space and everything, and because Junior doesn't have it all. Not, you know, so.
Yeah, but it's nice.
Yeah,
And
so.
that'll be a companion.
Yes, and the cat too. So I was worried about him being under her feet, but he doesn't do like he does me. Like every time I turn around, I'm falling over him. Just careful with her. Yeah, so
He's a good dog.
He's a good boy.
It's just, it's amazing that they're taking up, right in our area, it's gonna be over 1,800 acres.
We've been saying that since the accident, when we hit mirrors.
Right, some of the best in the
You know, like the generations now are doing one thing. They want to make money off of housing.
Don't look at me, I mean, I do build housing, but it's not like that.
Well, they're thinking they're gonna grow all the roads, so these buildings, that's what they're gonna do. I mean, they've got buildings now that are doing that, but if you read that crap. So they think, well, we'll grow it and it'll be okay, yeah, then they wonder why you have so many health.
Organic food.
Yeah, you have so many health problems.
This is not going to fare well for us.
That's all that,
Yeah,
They won't buy that.
it's, you know, waiting.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I try not to look at mine during this, because it'll be somebody, oh, my car is falling apart.
Well, but I've got somebody back at the office when I can send. Can you
Oh,
look
okay,
at it?
okay.
You know, we can keep things moving.
The old pallet station wagon that sits there?
It's gone.
It's gone now? It was a classic.
485, that's all they make.
Yeah.
Need a couple little words. You gotta do what you say.
96.
Yeah. What'd you get for it?
What's it to you?
As your neighbor, I was wondering. He never drove it. Yeah, that was a classic. Put Mooney hubcaps on it with a 350 National Ash brake. Huh? That's why I
It's a fuel injected car.
was it a Fuelie?
That's it in front.
Nice.
Sorry, I was talking too fast there in the beginning.
No, that's very common when you're reading from a PowerPoint to, you know, people get ahead of steam. If I start losing it, then I just.
And I'm glad you slowed me down.
No, sometimes the old gal just gets so tired.
You write me a note?
Well, let's just keep this in mind
Take a blood space now?
if it comes up.
What's that?
You got more space than store stuff now?
No, actually, this car is pretty good size for being a mid-size.
I was just trying to know if it like got more space to store now.
No.
Hard, it's not convertible, right?
What's that?
It's not convertible, right?
Sedan. Was it 65? It's got a post on it.
What motor?
454. A gas haul.
So basically you gotta drive home once.
I will.
Then eventually they won't see the long line, Jennifer loves the long lines.
Dollar General, Dollar General. What's it, be 10,000? I figured Dollar General, and then whatever they count for 80,000. They could put that Dollar General.
Nope.
Because that one's,
Where's the closest Dollar General?
the one down there, right past Slater, where,
So yeah, they have a good gap.
I don't know, isn't there better I thought that was a better area.
I don't know if that was.
The restaurant, a nice restaurant to go to, not too far away. Yeah. You know, the Italian, I haven't been to the new Italian restaurant, have you? No, I don't know. The one by the Palm Beach. Yeah, we have. I heard it was expensive. I heard, right. Yeah. Yep. What are they doing?
Who knows?
I'm trying to figure where the property is.
Well, there's that little one on Bayshore, but it's even still open in Bayshore. In that shopping center. It was right next to Dollar General.
There you go.
Now it's in the town. I don't know how that.
Bobby, I think Bobby and Brody. They said it was good, they said they're slow.
Is that right?
Very small and some.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, apparently they make some, she said, I don't want to know if they're making.
There was an Italian restaurant at Littleton Road, 41. And I don't know, they closed up, and that's where the physical therapy is. If you went across Littleton and made a right north, 41 north, it was in that shopping center right there. There's some doctors in there. Next thing that restaurant closed up, I don't know, COVID made it close up. Be up to 357.
They didn't get a letter, they didn't get
Tim got one. I'll have to ask him.
We're all right here on they don't want to share.
The only thing is, hopefully, the one they've been talking about is the one that goes, because otherwise they put all that roads in the middle. They showed that one, had all the roads in the middle, they've just been going distance, so.
We're right there.
Oh, yeah?
John was working. They owned all of them.
Well, do you think they're going to estimate it out? What's the estimated value?
None of us can stop.
I agree. They don't. It's all about.
Guys up there wants the road line when that is.
Do it every now and then.
So my daughter passed her driving test this morning.
Is that good news or bad news?
I've been driving her all over the place, so it's very good. And we bought her a car yesterday.
Oh my goodness.
A little Hyundai, just a little 80,000 miles, you know. It's got 180 horsepower, so like it barely goes.
Well, I had an old Ford Explorer. It was. I had saved it because I wasn't.
We have a lot of working drafts. Okay, good.
It's
back
solid,
there.
yeah.
So
Yeah. I think I started working on the,
I was driving her to school one morning because she said, well, I need a car.
Okay.
No. Can you pay for one? No.
no, we can, if you have anything you want to talk about
I can
after
pay
this.
for it. And she goes, well, that's different because there were four. I don't know that I see the world that way. I said, besides, we get to talk on the way to school. So one morning, neither of us are in a chatty place. She goes, so is this one, you know, the bonding that we're doing, so I can't get a car?
Oh, teenage girls are the worst, aren't they? They're just.
A, she was too smart for her own good. B,
We're getting ready to
type A
begin.
personality,
Yeah.
so it's like,
I don't know.
and sure, your filter gets better as you get older, I think.
See, this.
As a teenager, she had no filter.
Well, they think they know everything.
Yeah, I was really stupid at that point in time.
Oh yeah. We get really dumb when they're teenagers.
I got smarter as she got older, so.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I'll look forward to that.
Yep, time will come when you'll be surprised how smart.
My daughter's pretty artistic, and she has taught herself how to do nails. So she's been doing all the girls' nails in school. Makes 100, 150 a week. Look at her nails. Yes.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah.
We're back on the record,
Get them stuck on.
starting with staff's presentation.
We're still in morning. Good morning. Dirk Danley, Lee County Zoning. I'm a principal planner with the zoning section. I have previously been accepted as an expert witness in the Lee County Land Development Code and Lee Plan and would like to do so again today.
Yes, please proceed.
Just to begin with, on the notes about the 48-hour letter, we will have separate staff come to discuss most of those conditions. There was a comment about the agricultural use affidavit being Exhibit B instead of Exhibit A, but since we're going to be providing that executed agreement after this hearing, we'll go ahead and make those changes as part of the conditions documented as well.
So you're going to supplement the record with the executed affidavit, or you're going to remove the condition from the?
My assumption is that we're going to provide an updated agricultural use affidavit and also clean that portion of the attachment C that actually references where it is as a different exhibit into our file. Just to speak briefly, the conditions 6 and 7 and 8 will be addressed by one of our natural resources staff, and the Gopher Tourists will be addressed by Beth when after our presentation, or after staff's presentation. But just to speak briefly, I'll try not to belabor the points that the applicant has already made and we're in agreement with. But this is a rezoning of approximately 66.5 acres to mixed-use plan development to allow for up to 357 dwelling units with that single-family cap of 250 with 80,000 square feet of commercial uses. There's not a lot of significant zoning history to this. This is zoned agricultural. It's being used for agricultural uses today. It's bounded by Samville Road and Bayshore Road. I don't know if it was clearly articulated yet, but Samville Road is a collector road along this section and then a local road along this section. Even though it wraps around as a single road, it has two different designations, and that's why we have some seemingly redundant deviations, because one references collector, one references local. And then Bayshore Road wraps around the north and west side. And then, as already been explained at length, Chapel Creek does run along from north to south along the property, kind of creates two different tracts of land, and the applicant separated that out to where the commercial is on the east, residential on the west. The applicant has gone through at length explaining the two separate master concept plans. What we've done is just provided them as superimposed so you can see where everything lines up. The access point that they're proposing on Bayshore does line up with Oak Creek. And then the access point here will line up with the storage area to the east as well. And then there's also, it wasn't stated, but this is really the marker that's just out of picture here that I usually see when we're going through this area is it's a concrete. They're making concrete structures and other things there. That's usually the thing that jumps out at me at this area. So I don't know if you've been to the site yet, but that's usually the thing that I see more than the Western Wear country store here, the retail store here. Just to go back to it, this does create two separate pods with the multifamily or ALF to the north and the single family and two family attached to the south. We did say that because these are each on their own, standing on their own, that they're meeting those requirements individually from the Land Development Code, that they were going to need a deviation to satisfy that requirement of 2 access points. And that's why this secondary point, or this stabilized secondary connection point was created to ensure that, should something happen here, they're still able to get access to this pod from somewhere other than Bayshore Road and vice versa. The secondary plan has the more integrated mix of uses, still with the single family and 2 family attached along the south. The access points are the same and the preserve areas are the same. And just to go back to something that was noted in the 48-hour letter, the preserve area here, this area specifically, on the 2 different master concept plans, the staff report showed different numbers for size, but they really were intended to be the same 1.7 acres. So at the 48-hour letter, they did provide an updated master concept plan that reflected that those numbers are the same, or that they will be the same. And then this is just another contextualized master concept plan so you can see how it lines up with everything else in the area. The applicant has gone through at length to explain the decision-making criteria for rezonings. We'll try to address them as we go through the lead plan analysis, and then we'll talk briefly about the deviations as they're crafted today and where staff stance is right now. But this is in a suburban future land use category. Objective policy 1.1.5 considers residential uses predominantly, but does also consider commercial uses as well. They're not specifically prohibited like industrial uses are. And then also with the density of 6 units an acre, they're able to utilize the wetland areas on their property and bring that density, if they're not impacting that, into the upland areas of their site. So that's how they're meeting those, or getting to those numbers for density on their site. This area is located in a Bayshore corridor in North Fort Myers. Specifically, it's in the commercial corridor of North Fort Myers. Bayshore it runs east of Business 41 all the way out east to State Road 31. So this really is it's a different kind of area, but it still is in the North Fort Myers community plan area. The commercial corridor does consider a mix of multiple family uses and commercial uses just by right if you're in the right zoning districts along the entirety of any of the commercial corridors in North Fort Myers. So the higher intensity residential uses along the corridor is really consistent with what's considered in the lead plan and the land development code. The lower density residential uses to the south, staff does find that helps break up that higher intensity uses to these established residential communities to the south. There is a mix of lot sizes ranging anywhere from, I think, a 1/4 acre almost up to 5 acres, just immediately south of the subject property. And then there's the mobile home to the east. Policy 5.1.3 goes into ensuring that residential uses are near the things that you would expect for everyday life, employment, shopping, parks, and schools. As we've already stated, this is in the North Fort Myers commercial corridor. There's employment to the west as you head closer to 41, and to the south once you get into Fort Myers. There's a handful of schools in the area that are within 5 miles just of the subject property, and there are nearby parks and public facilities as well. We already talked about this a little bit, but there is really a mix of residential uses to the south and east, and quite frankly to the north as well. In this area, really considers the density that they're proposing based on the future land use category, but the way that they've proposed to taper off development as you head southward does promote for some compatibility with the neighboring properties to the south. And then to the east, the mobile home park to the east really just shares frontage with that drainage canal. There's a little bit to the north that would share frontage with the commercial tract, but those areas would be adequately buffered as required by the Land Development Code. Goal 6 of the LEAP plan just works through some of the development requirements for commercial uses. The applicant does request a handful of deviations from the Land Development Code, but overall we found them consistent with policy 6.1.1 as it pertains to the landscaping, screening and buffering, and detailed site planning, and the traffic impacts. I think Ted did a pretty good job of explaining that there's two ways of looking at traffic impacts at the zoning level and at the development services level. There is an acknowledgement that there's a lot of growth happening on Bayshore Road, but with the impacts from this specific development, that does not create pause for our considerations for the rezoning. But what will need to be improved on the property or on the offsite roadways for Sandville, those intersection points, are going to be more detailed at a fine level at the development order stage. Policy 6.1.4 goes through compatibility, again, similar to 5.1.5. Staff finds that the design that they have is consistent with this policy. Going back to the landscaping, open space, and buffering, we do find that they meet the Land Development Code except where they're seeking those deviations, specifically along the creek. But we do find them consistent with that policy. And then this area really is experiencing a lot of development. There's a lot of infill coming into this corridor because the growth is really quite intense in this area. I think the anchor of growth is really the Del Webb community to the north, but there's a lot of new development coming along the entire corridor, not just localized in this area. So we don't find this to be premature for the area. Objective 30.1 just speaks to an affordable housing options within the community, specifically North Fort Myers. And then Goal 135 speaks to addressing the housing needs of the county. The growth of the area really shows a need for a mix of residential uses. And so staff finds that because this product or this rezoning considers a plethora of products on the site, that this really meets the intent of these goals, or this objective in this goal. And then just to speak to the commercial uses, any time that we're able to create more diversity and stability within the economy that is consistent with the rest of the LEAD plan policies, objectives, and goals, we really do find that it meets the intent of this goal. And so staff finds that the commercial use that's being proposed on the eastern portion does meet Goal 158 as well. There are 10 deviations being sought by the applicant. They've gone through and explained them, but the first two are a similar deviation about the separation of detention areas from right-of-way. Staff did recommend approval for those. Then the 10254 speaks to lot shape and design. We did recommend approval of that with their insets on the master concept plan. That goes through 10296K1 and then 10703. We did speak a little bit on the means of ingress and egress for MCPA, where we requested that stabilized access points to the north and to the south, pods of MCPA. And we do recommend approval of that deviation. The waterway buffer requirement that's being sought to be reduced down to 0 within the FDOT right-of-way easement, we did recommend approval for that as well. And then the last three are about the roadway design, and we did recommend approval for those as well. That said, staff does find that the request meets or exceeds the decision-making requirements found in the Land Development Code, and we do recommend approval as conditioned in Attachment C. I don't know if you want to ask me questions, and then we'll have additional staff come up, or...
Yes, if you are having additional staff to speak to the conditions that have been requested to be removed. I have a question in terms of your compatibility analysis.
Okay.
I noticed that the multifamily and ALF uses can be 45 feet in height, maximum height, surrounding project, even the commercial is capped at 35. How many stories do you anticipate that would be if it was 45?
My understanding is 45 feet is usually 3 stories. And like I said, that's only along the commercial corridor areas that do consider, commercial multifamily, and in this case, assisted living as well, if you were in the correct zoning district, of course.
Right.
But we do, go ahead.
So that would be the master concept plan alternative that contemplates either multifamily, for lack of a better word, mid-rise product, or an assisted living, or that type of use, which would be similar mid-rise building complex, or maybe one building.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, both master concept plan alternates consider the same types of uses. It's a little bit hard to see, but this does have consideration for the ALF and ILF along this areas here. I believe, I don't know if it says it there as well, but multifamily is considered in these areas until you get down into the southern portion as well. So this is MCPB. MCPA sets its own pod for the multifamily. And
Okay, so even MCPB would allow the heights of 45, you're saying?
Yes.
In the areas that are designated for assisted living. Okay, take a closer look at that. So I misunderstood that. I thought the multifamily and the assisted living was limited to the one master concept plan. Okay, thank you. That completes your presentation?
My part of staff's presentation, yes.
And you're going to have someone speak to the environmental and drainage conditions?
Yeah, we'll start with Beth on the gopher tortoise question that you had, and any questions you may have about environmental.
Right. Do you have a copy of your PowerPoint you want?
Oh, yes, sorry, they're to the right of you. I stuck them on the table just out of view there before our presentation.
This will be Staff Exhibit 2. The staff report is Staff Exhibit 1.
Can we get a copy when you get a chance?
Yes.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Beth Workman. I'm with the zoning section. I did the environmental review for the zoning case. I have been sworn in today. And I was listening, and I understand that, Madam Hearing Examiner, you had some questions on the conditions for the gopher tortoise protection. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to ask that. There's confusion due to the way that it's worded, and I just want to make sure I understand it. It says, prior to the issuance of a development order for the residential or commercial portion of the proposed project, well, that means any development order, right? Because it's either residential or commercial, or residential and commercial.
I was being specific just by the way that Development Services reads these conditions on separation of a development order, because they could come in and do the commercial and then do the residential or ALF later in a new development order. They could have two separate development orders.
But prior to the issue of any development
Yeah.
order, they have to submit an indigenous and protected species plan, right?
Correct.
And that's going to require hand removal of exotics.
Correct.
And then it says, and protection measures for gopher tortoise burrows within the preserves and outside of the preserves for that portion of the project for which a development order is requested. So basically, you're just saying here that the DO has to submit the management plan that's going to require hand removal of exotics and protection of the gopher tortoises.
Correct.
Whether that's on-site or the ones that have to be relocated to another site.
Correct.
Okay. Same thing with the vegetation removal permit. That applies to any any and all vegetation removal permits. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that applies within the land area that's subject to that vegetation removal permit.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all I really had, unless you have particular questions about the overall environmental indigenous, the credits, or anything like that.
I don't. It's
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, what we were trying to clarify, and maybe you just did it and I'm slow. If I submit for a DO on the commercial and nothing's happening on the residential, do I have to survey everything or just what's within the parameters of my DO?
well, your legal description associated with your development order is only going to be for that commercial, so you would only be doing an indigenous management plan, species management for that, what's encompassing in that
The
DO.
DO is finite, so whatever the requirement is for that DO is limited to the land area that's the subject of the
But
development
that's
order.
not how that condition's written.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it that way.
Okay.
That's
Then
why
don't
I
need to ask
wanted,
her. If you're gonna fix it, I'm good.
that's why I wanted to clarify.
He's going to fix it.
Sorry, she solved the problem. I don't need to ask any more
Okay,
questions.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Nick DiFilippo. I'm with the Lee County Planning Section. I'll be talking about the natural resource conditions today.
Okay. You have a copy of the 48-hour letter?
I don't have it up here. Okay, thank you. And I've got copies of the presentation too, if you'd like.
So you're aware of their desire to
Yes.
modify the conditions?
Yes, that's why I made this PowerPoint. And I can share
You have
these.
a copy of that for me?
Yeah, I got one for the applicant as well. Thank you.
And the court reporter?
Do you have an extra one I can provide to the engineer?
I only printed two.
Okay, well then I'll.
Sorry, I can print more.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start with condition 6. This is the water quality monitoring condition.
Hey, hang on a second.
Oh, yep.
I have some housekeeping to do here.
Okay.
This is Staff Exhibit 3. I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm starting with condition 6. This is the proposed water quality monitoring condition. So as has been discussed at length, Chapel Branch Creek bisects the subject parcel, and this is a kind of a zoomed out aerial. You can see Chapel Branch Creek, do a little pointer, there you go, comes through here, continues, and outfalls ultimately into the Clusatchie River. Both of these are impaired water bodies. The development is proposing 2 outfalls into Chapel Branch Creek, one for the commercial portion and one for the residential portion. And yes, they have obtained a South Florida Water Management District ERP, but that issuance of that ERP presumes that the discharges from the system do not violate state water quality criteria. And that's outlined within the ERP Applicant's Handbook, Volume 2. So that's what's used when you permit a system. So given the schedule of uses that I proposed on this and the 2 outfalls into the natural waterway, Staff believes that they do have the potential of lowering existing water quality below state and federal standards. So we're continuing to recommend this water quality monitoring condition to find the project consistent with 125.1.2 and 125.1.4. And I mean, some of the schedule of uses that are proposed, we've got automobile repair and service, we've got bus station and a bus depot, we've got feed and fertilizer mixing and sales, so just a few, recycling facility, plant nursery, wholesale establishment, and then the 357 dwelling units. So we're continuing to propose this condition.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to move on to condition 7, and then, so condition 7 is about the off-site flows. So as was mentioned, there's 2 areas on this property that receive off-site flows, Chapel Branch Creek, and then there are flows that come from under Bayshore Road, enter that northwest wetland that's up in here, and then there is a existing shallow man-made ditch, as the applicant let us know during the review process, and that man-made ditch conveys the water to the Samville Road right-of-way, ultimately to Chapel Branch Creek. So condition 7 would require that the drainage calculations be provided prior to issuance of local development order to make sure that the conveyance capacity is being maintained. And that condition's not concerned with Chapel Branch Creek because they're not doing any improvements within that waterway. It's more concerned about the flows that are leaving that wetland because they are proposing to pipe that and reroute it slightly. So we just want to make sure that we can find that consistent with 126.1.4 and ensure that there's no flooding upstream or downstream as a result of the alterations to the existing conveyance.
Is that a one-time calculation associated with each development order?
That would just be whenever they come in for that development order that includes that, the rerouting of that existing ditch. So when they come in to do the residential, they would ideally provide us with the drainage calculations that support the piping of that ditch.
That's a one and done. They come
It's a
in for
one,
the
yes.
residential pod, they show the calculations as part of the DO review package.
Yes.
And they're on their way.
Yes. Yes. So this is just this is actually from the ERP civil plans that they provided with a 48-hour letter. I just highlighted the 2 outfalls into the creek, and then on the left side, that is the proposed piping of the offsite flows from that wetland. And then as far as condition 8, we staff agrees with the applicant's proposed changes. The MCP exhibit that depicts the drainage and access easements that will meet the code requirements. So we do agree with the proposed changes there on condition 8.
So you're saying I can incorporate their requested modifications to the language of that paragraph?
For condition 8, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That's the end of my presentation. I'm available for questions.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Staff or applicant?
I have some questions.
Yep.
What analysis did you do to determine that there's a, quote, potential for violation of water quality standards? And did you review the same information that South Florida reviewed?
We have not been provided the level of detail yet. The potential that I'm referencing is based upon the 2 outfalls into that natural waterway that's impaired, and then the schedule of uses that are proposed. And I'd say again that the issuance of the district permit is a presumption of state water quality criteria compliance.
That's correct. It's presumed that it doesn't. What do you have to rebut that presumption?
Once again, I'm basing that on the schedule of uses and the proposed outfalls into the natural waterway. Those,
Which would be the same outfall that the South Florida evaluated, correct?
unless something changes when the development order comes in. I mean, ERP permits can change. They can be vacated, they can be withdrawn.
The ERP permits take into account the uses that were requested by the applicant and this,
That I don't know.
or does it not go into that level of detail?
That I can't speak on. But our review and our condition is based on the uses. And that's how we came to the constituents that were included in the water quality monitoring plan.
Right, and I understand based on the uses that you enunciated that that might raise a concern.
Exactly.
Applicant, do you have other questions?
I do have further questions. In your memo, which is attachment L, you reference policy 125.1.2 that says new development in addition to existing development must not degrade surface and groundwater quality. Did you do any analysis and anything that indicates that this proposed new development is going to degrade water quality?
We haven't been provided civil plans as part of the zoning, so our conditions are based upon the proposed uses and what we've been given throughout the review process.
If you know, has the county undertaken any amendments to the land development code to implement this policy?
There's no language in the land development code, which is why this condition is proposed.
But the Florida statutes do indicate that the policies are general guidance and that local governments are to implement policies through the land development code, doesn't it?
I can't speak on that, I'm not sure.
And your concern you've expressed both in your memo and here today is because the basin's impaired. Is there anything in policy 125.1.2 that provides new development an obligation to fix existing impairments?
No, it just requires that they don't further degrade the surface and groundwater quality.
And you do note in your memo, I believe, that it's E. coli is the constituent you're most concerned about?
That is one constituent. There are other
Do
constituents.
did you hear Mr. Baracco testify that E. coli is generated by septic tanks and large mammals like cattle, horses?
I have heard that, yes. Pet waste is also a source of E. coli, but staff is open to, to remove E. coli from the constituent list if that.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you have a degree and a certification in civil engineering?
I do not.
Do you have a degree or certification or license in geology?
Do not.
Do you have a degree or license in hydrogeology?
Do not.
And you also reference policy 125.1.4, the state development, which have the quote potential of lowering existing water quality standards below state and federal water quality standards, will provide standardized, appropriate monitoring data. Again, the only thing you have to rely on, you're basing this condition on, is someone else's, an existing impairment and the proposed uses, if I understand your testimony.
Yep, and I've worked with our natural resources staff throughout the review of this. So.
And after having.
I want to take a closer look at the uses that seem to be driving the condition to see how likely it is that those uses will be developed on the site.
Removal of some of those could reduce the constituents that we're requesting. So.
You don't have to answer that in real time. I'm just
okay.
I'm putting it out there
No,
for you to discuss with your team. I'd like to keep the hearing moving, so
Okay.
yeah.
That's all I've got.
Thank you, Nick. Unless Neil has additional questions. Do you have additional questions? Or can he sit? I'm not rushing you. I'm just he's asking.
Actually, can I ask? You mentioned the uses. Can you run through those again? Which uses that?
I mean, these are just some that I've highlighted real quick. I mean, we've got the automobile repair and service, groups 1 and 2, bus station depot. We've got feed or fertilizer mixing and sales, farm equipment service, the wholesale.
I'm sorry, I lost the one after fuel, fertilizer. What was
I mean, I don't intend this to be, all-inclusive. So these are just some that I've highlighted. So, I mean, if you want to work with us after to maybe reduce some of these uses, I mean, I'm
I'm
open
going
to
to
that.
give you all a chance to discuss that. If you could just run through it so I have it for the record. Just read it.
Okay, just read the ones I've highlighted.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start at the top. So I've got automobile repair and service groups 1 and 2, bus station depot. I've got contractors and builders groups 3, farm equipment sales, storage, rental, or service, feed or fertilizer mixing and sales, laundromat, lawn and garden supply store, plant nursery, recycling facility, self-service fuel pumps.
Well, let's stop with that one.
Truck.
Let's stop with the self-service.
Go ahead.
Because a lot of these uses, and this one, since I've done many racetrack gas stations, you are aware, when you say that this is a problem use, that DEP has stringent regulations on gas stations. You have to have dual wall tanks, you have to have monitoring, and a variety of other things to ensure that there's no hydrocarbons that leave the site.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a problem use in this area. It's just the use that, if that is what you want to end up doing any of these, I don't have a problem with doing any of these. It's just a matter of implementing the appropriate water quality monitoring. That's.
And
Okay.
you don't have any information between the step of this is a use that could be a problem to indicate that it actually is a problem when you consider all other pertinent regulations. It's just maybe it could be.
I'm reviewing this with our natural resources staff who is, works in this kind of environment every day, so they have experience.
Can we get, I understand the nature of your objection. Can we get through the list, please?
Yes, sir.
Oh, all right,
Sorry.
let me get back to it.
I stopped at self-service.
Self-service, yeah.
Let's see, we got truck stop, transportation services, group 3, wholesale establishments, then dwelling units, 357.
Do you have all groups in wholesale establishments are concerned, or just one of
I
them?
believe 3 and 4, but once again, this is just something that I
I'm going to give you a chance
ran
to
through.
discuss during the break. I just
Okay.
want something for the record here.
Okay. So, yep. So the ones that highlighted quickly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there any other staff witnesses? Okay, I'm going to open up the floor to members of the public. If anyone came in late and did not subject themselves to the oath, please let me know when you get to the podium. I'm going to take these one at a time until we get through all of them. And then I will invite anyone who didn't fill out a form that wishes to speak to come forward. So, let's see.
Can they put the map back up on the screen?
Yes.
The master concept plan or the aerial?
Master concept.
Okay. Master concept plan, please.
Because I now realize from being in our office, you're in charge.
Ronald Strine.
You made it.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch Ronald's last name. What was it?
Strine.
Okay, now I got it.
I'm not sure I pronounced it correctly, but
I can at least write it down.
I just have a fairly simple question.
state your name for the record, sir.
My name is Ronald Strine. I live on Lloyd Road, which is just south of Samville. I can show you. I live right here. And I've been living there for about 30 years, roughly, okay? Quick question, okay? You're going to widen this end of Sandville, and you're going to widen this end of Sandville. Now, did I hear him say that they were going to have an emergency or overflow access onto this part down here somewhere in Sandville? Did I thought I heard him say that, but I'm not sure.
Okay, we're gonna make note of the questions and then answer them, but let me just tell you, it's my understanding, based on the testimony, that that emergency stabilized access would connect to the cul-de-sac and then direct traffic down that road out to the access that is on Samville. Because if you look, you don't see that hash line extending all the way to Samville.
Mike,
They're going to go to that cul-de-sac
So they're
and
gonna go
then,
to the cul-de-sac, the cul-de-sac will run down here.
correct. That was my
And
understanding.
And this is gonna be 4 foot wider, 2 foot on each side.
Yes,
And over here, 2 foot on each side.
correct.
My concern was if they were gonna come down here with an emergency access point, they're coming out on a substandard road.
Did I understand correctly that it's going to tie into the cul-de-sac?
You're correct. The cul-de-sac ties up to the multifamily.
So there is no access other than those 2 points.
Correct.
Okay, that's my question.
Thank you. Okay, David Dulorg?
I got it right the first time.
Dulong.
My concern, I live on Church Drive, which is an extension down to your right here. And I've noticed that school buses come down Samville Road. If you have a school bus on that road and you have a dump truck or any vehicle large, somebody's got to go off the road to pass. That road in the lower area is not wide enough, as you've previously stated. It doesn't meet the requirements of the county to start with. Living where I live, I know most people who live up in the mobile home park, and they want to go west on Pine Island, utilize Samville Road to get out to it. So there's more traffic there. And if this is increased from the other side, from the commercial area, once the people realize that to go west on Pine Island, you have to go down to the railroad tracks and turn around. You cannot go across. So they come down and go out Samville Road as well. That's an increase of traffic use, which I don't think was noticed.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out, sir. Raymond John Joseph Briggs?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, sir. Please state your name for the record.
I am Raymond John Joseph Briggs. I live off 3rd Street. My question to you is, what's our base model house prices are going to be for these areas? So if we know how this is going to increase our property values of any way, and when is the estimated time of breaking ground to finished date? Like a rough estimate, between 6 months. I know that building qualities kind of measure when you can get a hold of them. And the last question, the previous man just stated a fact that was not quite brought up, was the fact that everyone uses the left-hand turn off of we're going to go westbound, is going that way through Sandville. And I drive a big truck, so I know that if a big truck and a car, one of us is just going to go off this road a little bit. It's not that big. But
So are you sharing his concern that
Yes.
patrons of the commercial parcel will go down Samville so they can make a left?
yes, and in fact, if you were to make a right-hand turn, you would do the other way. So if you were to go eastbound, most people would go this way, because it's faster than fighting all the traffic through the Bayshore Road. So any residential neighborhood won't make that right onto Bayshore right there. Most people would probably go all the way around.
Okay, thank you.
And that's basically all my statements and questions.
Tammy Pate. Thank you for coming this morning. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Tammy Pate. I might have misunderstood, but was it said that there would be less traffic with multi-family units as opposed to single-family
You
units?
heard that correctly, and actually it's based on long-term scientific studies, but we will ask them to go into greater detail to explain to you about how the experts that publish these manuals arrive at that conclusion.
Okay, because,
I know it seems counterintuitive, but.
yeah, I just like, you know.
I'll have them elaborate on that.
Okay, and the other thing is the waterway, when it comes down and it's going into the ditch, I don't know, is that what y'all call swells down here? I'm from Kentucky. The ditch?
Roadside ditch on Samville?
Yes. Okay, the roadside ditch is now there since Hurricane Ian. But before Ian, there was no ditch there. I mean, it was a little dip down, but it was not maintained. Is that gonna be maintained to go down? Because if not, it's just gonna flood everybody out. So.
Okay, I will ask them to clarify that issue for you.
And again, the road, people do exactly what the past two gentlemen said. And if they're gonna extend the road just from their entrances, will they only be able to make a right turn out? Or a left turn out? Do you see what I'm saying?
I'll ask the transportation engineer to clarify the turning movements that are permissible at Samville Road on the east side.
Yeah, so if they're only gonna widen what their people in there is gonna use, then they should not be using all the other parts of the road.
Right. I understand.
Kinda saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah, your observations are similar to the two other speakers in that regard.
Exactly, yes.
People are using the other way as a bypass to get
Yes.
to a median opening.
And during season, people walk and ride their bikes through there. It's very dangerous, very dangerous.
Thank you. Larry Pate? Thank you for coming. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Larry Pate. I live over on in Pioneer Village, and I'm a board HOA member. And my concern is the ditch. On the front side of what they're going to do is great, but once it goes under the road, we flood back in the back of our park, and that ditch is not open. That you're going to add more water. I'm talking further on down into the refuge heading toward the river. So we flood from that creek that we're talking about. When we get a hard rain, it floods over into Church, we call it Church Street area. And there's nobody gonna do nothing about that creek on that side, so we're gonna add more water to it.
Can somebody show me where Church Street is?
Right here.
That's Church Drive, and it goes on down.
So,
And this is all.
okay, so
mobile
you're
homes. When that ditch floods, it floods all of the area, and we get flooded on the back end of our park. And nobody maintains that ditch. They're worried about this end of it, but where that water's going, they're not worried about, and it's all growed up.
So your concern is that the outfall from this project is going to exacerbate that?
It's gonna add more water.
Okay, I'm gonna ask them to clarify.
We're already bringing it from across the road in, and when we get a hard rain, this water comes over to us.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Terry Ferguson?
Terry Ferguson. I'm from Pioneer Village also. My concerns are basically what we've been hearing, the safety on Samville during the school bus, people on bicycles. If they would widen the entire Samville Road, I think we could solve the problem. I'm not against progress here in building. I just want it safer because we have people on bicycles, people walking. You have Pike with their electrical trucks who are like a 2-ton truck, dual wheeled. They drive that road to go westbound on Bayshore. It makes it a hazard for everybody. I've heard of issues of people hitting mirrors besides going off roads. And safety, I think, needs to be really important and get this road up to code. Also, to back the previous gentleman's talk on the water issue, I live on Church Drive, and the houses across the street from me, on the heavy rains, has water almost up to their home. If this is going to increase the runoff, it's also a concern, and I don't know how we can deal with that.
Can you show me where that is on the map?
Yeah, okay. strike comes down here. This is where I'm going here, but this comes back, and these homes right here will have water almost up against their homes in the summertime when we get the wet season.
So you share the concern that the outfall into that roadside ditch that empties out into the creek may have off-site impact?
Yes. Because we're taking away the absorption factor with all the building.
Okay.
If we can figure out a way to maintain that water and keep it from flowing down the creek, maybe we can help everybody out.
I'll have their project engineer elaborate on how that all is going to work and what measures are going to be implemented to alleviate that.
Okay, thank you.
When we get back to. That was Terry Ferguson, right? Okay, Thomas Wallace? Good morning.
My name's Thomas Wallace. I live in Pioneer Village as well. My concern is the safety on Sandville Road. It's 20 feet wide. You're running the gauntlet every morning when you're going down that road. Between Pike's trucks, school buses, cars in opposite directions, somebody always has to pull over or get off of the road. If there's a pedestrian, it's even more hazardous. It's 20 feet wide, Sandville Road. From the edge of Sandville Road to the telephone pole, you get another 16 feet. And there's plenty of room for a sidewalk, drainage, all the way from Bayshore down to Chapel Creek. It can be done. They choose not to do it. They want to fix their 400 feet on that end, sidewalk, doesn't value us trying to walk out. 500 feet on the commercial side, opposite Pike's electric trucks, again, doesn't help us. If you're going down Sandville, it's a hazardous situation. You're running the gauntlet. It needs to be fixed. I don't begrudge them making money, but if you're going to do that, make it safe for everybody. And if they're not going to do it, the county needs to. Somebody needs to step up and fix that road. Not wide enough. It's a hazard.
Thank you. John Metzger?
What they just said is what I want to say.
Okay, I'm going to invite you to come to the podium and state your name and say just that, because if you would like the opportunity to address the commissioners at the final hearing, it won't count if you just say it from your chair.
I'm John Metzger, live right across the road from the development. I heard you talk about a 4-foot sidewalk you're going to put in. How far is the 4-foot sidewalk going to go down Sandville? All the way? If so, which side? If you are going to improve the road, it would seem to me with common sense, it would be a lot easier to go 4 foot to the new development and fix all of that to make the road more safer versus coming 2 foot into our yards and going through all that extra construction.
Thank you. Joanne Knapp. Good morning.
Hello, I'm Joanne Knapp, and I live at the corner of Sandville and Lloyd Road. And I am right there where the water comes through at, where they have that pipe under the road, where the water flows through. And
can you show me that on the map?
Is this your property here? Can you point to it for us? This is Lloyd here.
right there is where the thing comes through. It's right there.
I see. So
They
you're
got it here, but yeah, it's like right here it comes through.
you're
And here's
across
our
from the
ditch.
outfall.
Huh?
You're across from the outfall is what you're telling me.
Exactly.
And, okay, go back to the podium and tell me what your concern is.
Okay, my concern is when, like, 2 years ago, they came through and did the ditches. They dug them all out and they made sure that the flow was going where it was supposed to go. And they put new sod in, which they just threw it in, did not pack anything down. And so the first rainfall and stuff, ditches filled up. They stayed full for 5 months. And I still had that water coming from across the thing, that the water will flow all the time from across the street. And now you're going to put houses in there, and this is going to add more water that's going to flow, because they're saying from the outlet flow it's going to, come. And during the hurricane part, the water was flowing so hard through there that it was coming so fast that we went and plugged it up. We put a board there on the other side so it wouldn't come through that side, because it almost came into my house because of all the water that was flowing from across the road.
Okay, so just so that I understand what you're saying, is the roadside ditch that runs along Samville, that the county improved it, but the banks have collapsed back in, and so
They did not improve it. What they did.
the flow, it's not conveying the flow. And what's happening is the water is overflowing the banks. Is that what
Yes.
you're saying? So your question is this project going to be improving that ditch to accommodate the water that's coming off the site?
Correct.
Okay.
And-
I will ask them to please clarify that issue.
Right, and the other thing is the safety, because I try and walk the road. I do the whole around from Sandville to Bayshore, which is a mile walk for me. And so I like to do that, and there's lots of people that do that. We have bikers that go. There's like 10 bikers that will go around, and I know they go further than that, but a lot of us like to do that walk, and it's not really safe because the road is not an even road and it's narrow. And I know I was with my son-in-law one time, we're driving down there and with the mailboxes, and he has a big 350 pickup truck, and this other pickup truck came the other way with the wide mirrors, and the other truck did not move over at all and hit mirrors. And, and it's just, they need to widen the road. And I know it's they said that they were going to widen it, 2 feet, 2 feet. I don't understand why they're only going to go from their entrance to Bayshore on either end. Why not do the whole thing? Do you not think that people are not going to come out of there and make that left turn to go all the way down Samville and maybe not go the other direction so they don't? I mean, I don't understand why they would think that.
Get the master concept plan back up, please. So I'm just trying to understand what you're saying here, that there's 2 access points basically serving this project onto Samville. One is serving the commercial area, and your concern is the additional traffic that's going to try to do the bypass to get to the median.
Right.
It's going to increase traffic on that roadway and make it less safe for the walkers and the bikers and all that? Okay.
So if they know that the road's not safe because they're going to widen the parts of the road and put in the walkway, which on Bayshore they do have that wide sidewalk for people to walk on. But they're only going to do it from their entrance, from either side.
Right.
So I don't understand why they don't.
Well, the land development code requires them to improve the road to their entrance. So I'm thinking that's probably why that's all they did, just so that you understand that's a
Right.
code requirement. So in doing that, they're complying with the code.
Okay.
But I understand your concern,
I mean,
and I
that's
heard
the-
what the others are saying, that the potential that the commercial patrons may try to utilize the median opening.
Right.
I understand
Well,
that's a
because we get, like they say, the pike trucks, and they all park there in that commercial parking there by the Pioneer. And every morning and every night, when they come back home, they're right down Samville, and Samville's speed limit is 30 miles an hour, but they might be doing 50 or 60 down there, and so it's, kind of sad because that little road that you can barely put 2 cars down there, when you get the big old trucks, it's.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I have a great-granddaughter that plays, and she can't even get out and play on her bike because it's really not safe out there because there's just too much traffic and it's just not wide enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stacy Burgess Shelton. And just let us know if you'd like the aerial to be back up. I asked for them to put the master concept plan just so that I could clarify something.
My name is Stacy Shelton. I put my husband on there too because he'll be at the next meeting. I live right next door to Joanne. We were the ones driving the truck that got hit. And I do have a picture, if you would like to see it, of the road with a large truck and a car coming next to it. That's how small the road is.
Okay.
So that's the concern that everybody is having. Would you like to see the picture? Because I can show you as well.
Oh, that's a semi. I was thinking pickup truck.
No, that's the large trucks that come through. We get semis through there, we get the Pike trucks. 2 pickup trucks can't pass.
What is a pipe truck?
Pike is they do the electrical. Pike and Mass Tech, Lee County Electric, those trucks. So here's my thing. Like they say, out here for the commercial, also what nobody's thinking is the people that are gonna come home to this, they're not gonna wanna drive all the way over here in order to get in. They're gonna take the shortcut, turn here and come down. So that's more traffic as well. And if they're gonna bring more traffic onto the road, they should have to make that road safe and up to code. That's the big thing, is the safety for everybody.
I'm gonna ask the transportation engineer or planner to speak to that issue about the turning movements and the predicted travel path. Jeff Thompson?
Jeff Thompson. I live on Samville, right in the mobile home park, and as they were talking, the developer seems to think everybody's gonna go out this way, make a U-turn. Well, I have the pipe trucks here, which are bucket trucks. They all come down this way and fly out that direction. Yes. Louder. Yes, you're gonna build a development here. Yes, if we can make you have this a right turn lane, but a controlled turn, so they can only go one way. Captured with islands, you know what I'm saying? If they can, because we don't necessarily want to do this. So if they pull out, and you have that sign that says right turn, you have that sign that says right turn only, everybody's gonna go left. Anyways, but if you put a concrete.
I want you to talk on the microphone.
If you put a concrete in the island, you know, kind of a control measure to keep the traffic flowing that direction. That's the important thing. We're just trying to control the traffic to, yes, the developer's not responsible for widening the street. We would love for them to widen the street. The Lee County is the one that's gonna be on the hook, and we're gonna have to get in their shit to widen the street, you know? He knows that. And we just wanna try to get them to get out of their development and get right onto Bayshore. You know, there's two plans. There's this plan, and then there's the other plan that has everybody going out the Bayshore exit, which will be a signal there eventually, because you and Del Webb will be pushing 2,000 homes out that signal. It'd be nice if we could develop that other plan versus this back exit. You know, you show 2 plans, because that one that one has an emergency exit as a back exit versus having the 100 homes on that back street go out, that 130 homes go on that back street out. Make sense? So we're just trying to keep the traffic thinned out on Samville and Church.
Can I see the other master concept plan real quick?
The other one?
No, this one. This is the other one.
Well, the one that showed 2 roads back through here.
Right.
And then it going out that way.
Right, I understand. I'm just looking for a question that you made me think of. That is sort of a circuitous route for that emergency access connecting the 2 projects to come all the way down the southern road. And then out there, if it's supposed to be an emergency access, wouldn't the idea be that it would be straight down? I just passed that out for, okay, thank you, sir. Do you have anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Dave Funk, followed by Laura Funk. I'm not speaking.
You don't want to speak. I guess that's up. Dave Funk, I live on Sandville Road, 41 years, coming up on 42, so I've seen it change. The neighbor by Lloyd Road, there is a pipe under the road feeding her side. When the ditch gets full over there, it comes to our side, where all the houses, that's why she's getting flooded. That's one of the problems. And the other problem is the wetland there, is the pipe already under Bayshore coming over from Del Webb? Or are we going to bring water over from Del Webb?
Okay, I'll ask them to clarify that for us.
You know what I mean?
I know what you're saying. Do you understand what they're asking? Okay.
Right there, I don't know if there's traffic. I've had a neighbor tell me he got up to 80 mile an hour going past my house. I've stood out there, taken pictures, yelled, screamed, did everything but throw anything. He says, well, I got to 80 mile an hour when I got by there. This is the honest God's truth. I says, well, somebody went and talked to the person. He never come back out the road that way. And I won't blame Pioneer Village, because that's where he did come from. That's how fast he come out the road. I finally fought to get the 30 mile an hour speed limits. I guess it's been about 4 years. I fought with them. They finally put sensors on the road and checked it. So the signs are there. Police have come out a couple times. They got other things to do. They do ride down the road, but yeah, there's nobody doing the speed limit. Nobody. They fly by there, and like it says, people are out there on their bikes and riding, and it's their neighbors passing them most of the time. I shouldn't say I'm not against the park, but that's how it is. Then the other water coming off, when the creek comes out and runs down across there, it doesn't it kind of just opens up and meanders all towards Doherty Creek till it gets back in there. That's why they're getting flooded. It comes under the road at the bridge, and then when it goes back towards Pioneer Village, it just kind of opens up and meanders all down there. So we put more water in there, it's going to meander out. Swift Mud's been out there because Usepa Oaks is there, and they've had problems in the back. And they couldn't give anybody an answer. Well, they probably have to talk to the county. But that's what happens with it. If it went all the way through, it probably would flow, but after it comes back a little bit, it just lays right out there. It's just kind of working its way down through. And it doesn't soak in, it'll flood out before it soaks in.
Okay, thank you. Anything? I'm asking them all to take notes so that they can circle back and address these concerns.
If you widen the road, you better put speed bumps on it, because they'll be doing 100 mile an hour.
Thank you.
I'm not, that's serious.
Oh, it's a nice straightaway. I guess people can get their speed up.
I know how.
Laura Funk?
That's okay. I'll pass.
Ron Perry, followed by Bobby Perry.
My legal name is Barbara Perry. We live on Samville Road at 3rd Street, right on the corner. A lot of things that has not been discussed is the traffic volume even on Bayshore that we get. And it becomes so intense, they're not addressing the fact that there's a large truck stop and I-75 and a lot of traffic now using that road to get to 31. So we get backups on Bayshore, and they shoot down Samville to try to bypass the backups on Bayshore. And they do. I mean, and then you're going to add all these other people coming in and out of this community, coming in and out of that commercial, that are also going to be trying to use Samville Road. Samville Road is not up to standard. The speed is not addressed because they violate it constantly, and there's very little public safety issues. We're not getting a lot of police presence there at all. We have asked, many of us have asked for them to do radar and everything else on it because it's a dangerous, dangerous road. And I think this development is just, I mean, I know it's going to happen, but something's got to be done about the traffic situation, because between Bayshore and Samville, there's going to be numerous accidents.
Thank you. Is Ron Perry present?
Yes.
Would you like to speak, sir? She speaks for you this one time?
I'm good.
Okay. That's the last sheet I have. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak that did not fill out a form? Okay, I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back to the applicant unless you want to talk about continuing to another day. I have a hearing at 1.
I know you do, so how much time do we have to do the rebuttal?
I'll go right to 1. You know.
They're going to feed you somehow?
No, that's all right. I'll go hungry. I have snacks. I have snacks in my.
All right, well, eat some snacks and we'll go talk.
Okay, so you want maybe 15 minutes?
10.
Okay. We'll come back at a little bit after 12. Thank you.
Coming.
I know, it doesn't take dinner.
Okay. DOT, yeah.
You got your keys?
Sure. Do the same thing again. But they won't give us a notice? Will they give us a notice when the board is going to meet? Is this the county board?
Yes, Lee County Board of County.
Okay.
What will happen is she will issue a recommendation.
And we'll get emails.
Yeah, we'll get emails. What I'm not sure is if you guys make it up. What I can do, can I take your contact information down? I lost my pen, so I've been writing with this the little guy here.
Is JEFFREY THOMPSON at lamesarv.com.
LaMesa.com.
Okay. While we're on break, I'm gonna go try to get you onto the interested parties list, so there's no prolong.
Okay, cool, thank you.
The road is 26 foot wide. I did measure it in front of my house.
You know, even though we're not on the record,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, DOT is aware, and I don't have anything writing, I don't have any.
Do you know, are they tying into city sewer?
Yes. Issue.
Okay.
But this is a good forum.
And the city sewer,
Yeah, I forgot.
see, I'm
I
not
forgot when I
on
went up there to tell it, cause I'm measuring
Does
from
that
my
go
house.
out to
It
keep
says,
court?
what, It's 26
Or
foot
is-
in front of my house.
It might be a different service provider.
And that's 7840, I'm right between Third and December, which is.
Probably a different,
somewhere around
Now that one is.
I'm gonna go do
Okay,
that for you.
thanks, bud. So, hey, guys, like he said, the next meeting will be in front of our county commissioners, the board, okay? Yes, I agree with you. So we've got to do the same thing we did here. We've got to show up, okay? Because we also have to do the same thing there. We have to voice our concern about the width of the road, the speed, because the builder, they don't, they're not going to do it.
No.
Accept it. They're not going to do it. It's a county's problem. They're going to say, county, you fix it. That's what we pay your impact fees for. So what we have to do is make sure that he's put me on the interested parties list so that we get notification of when it goes back in front of the board again. because when it goes back in front of the board, we have to do the same thing, go up.
Yeah, they never notify. I got a letter.
That's what I need to tell them.
I didn't get any letter in the mail or
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah, and the next meeting won't be it won't have a zoning sign up. So they'll
It's gonna be a
assume,
county board meeting.
yes, because they will assume that
Other
we'll all
cars,
be
that guy.
slacking again.
Came
So
out
we
of
have to make sure
Pennsylvania.
that we show up.
Showroom.
You'll see it in the, if I get, because he's gonna put me on a paper, on a list. If I get it, it'll have a picture,
Yeah.
and I'll put it on the peeps, and you guys all see me around anyways. Okay?
I'll ride down
But I
the
gotta
road
get
with
back to work. Okay? I work for a living. I know, I have to work for a living. And we'll keep you,
Yeah,
we'll keep
I
you
mean, I
guys,
did that. I pulled all my hair out, so I
we'll
don't.
keep you guys in the loop too on the board, okay?
Okay.
Right,
You call that work?
Yes.
You get paid, I get it.
Okay, I've gotta go back to that.
yeah.
They're not, I don't see them.
No, they're protected by what's already governed.
Yeah, I don't see anything happening.
So what are we waiting for? The water issue could be the only thing that they go to revise.
They're, the builder's not
Speed up. Yeah, it's gonna speed up.
employees.
Across the street from me, it could be up to me.
Yeah, we put the bed on backwards.
Wait, Ron didn't tell you how to do it right?
We could get the boxes up over it. I
If
got
they vote
the
to
boxes
approve,
hanging down 20 inches.
then they're going against the safety of the
Yeah, get it up and over. I'm sorry, you could have brushed off the battery terminals.
the concerns
That's all
of
wrong
the
with the
public.
one with
I'm
That's
pretty
what
sure
we have to press upon.
Yeah.
The negative.
Okay? I gotta get to work.
Battery's fine.
I'll see you kids.
There's another terminal itself.
I know, I know.
That's a lot of good questions.
Cables.
That's all
It's all corroded. It's not making a good connection.
We're gonna wait to get
I wanna go to rest. I've already killed half the morning now.
I can guess what three votes.
Because I tried jumping it, it makes the same noise.
No, they're not.
The county is asking for stuff.
Yeah.
I'll come over and get
But the
it.
water flow, the water flow, they are.
Okay. I've been going, so I've got this thing ready for.
And they hear all these safety concerns and all these flooding concerns, then if they vote for it, then they're not concerned about the safety of the
No,
public.
right,
And they're not concerned about the flooding of the public.
right,
But they'll allow it.
But that's the point.
right. But you gotta beat these
The only
meetings.
question
You
I
gotta
have
be at
for
these
my
meetings
answer is
and
breaking
let
it
them
down.
know.
How long between
3 hours.
estimate of
I was
prices?
going again for dump, there was an extra access point
Hell no.
on the Lloyd,
You
on
couldn't
Suzanne.
live over there.
I just don't want no
I was
cheap ass
gonna get
housing next to us.
1,500 units onto a substandard
Super cheap,
county,
super cheap housing brings in the
substandard
wrong
road.
clientele.
But since that's not the case, they're widening it on.
I got it pretty cheap.
But
They're
just-
doing the same
But the
thing.
thing is, they're not controlling the traffic and flowing the rest of the road.
No.
But he had,
No,
one of the guys had a
everyone-
good point about controlling.
And I like the lady who was sitting there's comment about in the morning backup traffic, how they shoot through there to try
We all,
to get
yeah,
help
we all
people.
know that.
They're
We all
changing.
do the same thing. You have to make a left-hand turn. We all go down the west side. If you have to make a come in, we all come in the same way.
Everybody wanna guess where they're going quicker.
Yeah.
See,
We're
you
afraid
got
of
realign it,
when
right?
they drop
down, this is
the railroad.
Sandville will be square with Bayshore. Sandville's on an angle right now.
Bayshore block.
It's gonna be going this way.
And they'll come
It's gonna
down
be-
Sandville so
Oh,
they
yeah.
can come out a
Oh,
hell
they're
of a
right.
body.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yes, we all.
That's what they're doing.
Here and over to here.
They're gonna do it on the other side by the water tank, and it will be lined straight across. It won't be on an
You
angle
go out
like
that,
that.
yeah.
The school buses go out.
That's why I admitted. I mean, I do the same thing. We all do it.
Well, but you're halfway.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're down on Third Street, so
Here, I'm in the middle of both.
So where we,
same distance.
See, they were supposed to put Lloyd Road into Dougherty Street. You get on, I used to ride my bike, you get on there watching the bushes, one of them roads in Dougherty Street, comes right up to it. You turn around. It's lined right up the Lloyd
People
Road.
won't be able to get it.
what's that?
Well, I mean, yeah, they'll have
Because it's a
It is, cause I used to get on there,
Okay.
and I could ride my bike, and then everybody do it,
You can't ride a bike anymore?
not through there.
I mean, it wouldn't be too too bad if we had a nice sidewalk to go
Well, that
around
may
all
be
of
a
it.
good
We
thing.
can ride our bikes on the sidewalk.
I know, because that means you don't come and
Yeah.
But it isn't a stream, it just goes.
It's not maintained.
Well, you can't, it doesn't, it just meanders, it's just.
That's what Jim's Corvette is, 32.
Really?
Yeah.
33.
Is that from the hurricane that got flooded?
Yep,
Yeah.
had 2 foot of water in the back there.
Were they able to say anything?
Huh?
There's a double wide down there, and they got it in his garage.
Did it say it?
Marked out his Corvette.
Was he able to take it apart and clean it?
Nope.
C6. No, the insurance totaled it.
They totaled it.
Totaled.
C6 Corvette.
They totaled Dad's Buick.
How'd they do that?
Well, that Buick was underwater.
Oh.
You could see the water line on Jim.
I'm gonna show this to you, so in case he doesn't come back. Anybody who spoke form like this when the recommendation comes out, that will tell you the
continuance at one.
time,
I was gonna
the
say.
location, so everybody's gonna get notified. If you fill out one of those with an email
Yeah.
address, that's how that will happen.
Okay.
So if we fill one out, we'll get one of those?
Yes.
Yeah, because we didn't get a letter this time. We got nothing. We had one letter. 2 people I talked to here got a letter. Because I talked to somebody, and it was about the 28th of March. She says, the letters are going out. Well, I waited, and just last night, he was back with one of our other neighbors. He's right on the 500 foot. He goes, well, I got a letter, and somebody else left. Yeah, none of us got letters. I was really surprised. And that's when I talked, because I called down.
2 weeks ago, you said?
Yeah, there's just a response.
Because she said, tell them when you're coming for a hearing, so we parked right here. Because I said, where am I gonna park? She says, oh, just tell them you're coming for a hearing, they'll let. And that's why I said letter, and that was the 28th of March. when I talked to her.
So this is, hopefully more reliable, so it'll be an email. But what I can do is I can leave you my card on the way out.
I talked to you about a year ago, but.
Okay, sorry. But yeah, that way you'll have my email address.
Yeah, because I remember I had questions, because I remember I could see the corner of Barrett Road and Pine Island Road going across the street. I'm like, because they moved.
Right. His bike
I
broke
says,
off and
so we won't have that.
dislocated his shoulder and everything down in that ditch.
But, yeah, I can leave you with a card too, just in case. But like what I was telling you.
I mean, how long will they go out this time? Months? Year? I mean, it's been a year since last time we were
Yeah, this has been
almost
long.
to the, what?
It's been
Year and a
longer-
week, or, yeah,
longer
year
than
and a week.
because this is a DCI, this is a 21 case, and it was actually, the first one was withdrawn, and, because they tried to redo it, basically. So there's actually a 2020 case.
Wow.
And it's really a long time.
Well, we were in here in 2007 or whenever, sat in here for the
That one was withdrawn.
2007, yeah,
Yeah,
that's.
yeah, they got so far with it, and the
Yeah.
bottom fell out of
I
the
still got
market.
the print- I still got the print hanging on my wall.
And those,
Yeah.
that was Transeastern at that
Yes.
time.
And
And
then-
the company nearly, I think, went bust.
And then that was right at the same time as Del Webb got approved, that got through at that time
Right.
and sat.
Yep.
And then the Zuber builder lived 30 miles from us up north.
Oh,
Never
that is-
knew that till.
Isn't that strange? Small world.
Yep.
It's like when you see somebody at the airport.
I'm like, he came to town, where you live at? Oh, I live here. I go, where'd you live at? Lived on the other end of town, Pittsburgh.
No, I meant
Yep, that's where, so we got to see him a couple of times. His grandfather had that, he'd been in the family a long time.
Jennifer?
We ready? I will get them.
So this will come.
I thought they were right behind me. Apparently I was wrong.
I'll give you the timelines, right?
Yeah.
So generally, a hearing examiner recommendation comes out in a month.
Are you going to prompt me with questions or just?
Yes, but if I forget something that you have on your list, go over. And there's one more thing I want to mention. And I will say, great.
So that'll probably be about 30 days.
I forgot to ask Carl about the offset flows onto the
Well, I'm
property.
going to talk about impact fees, road improvement money, and the port side.
Yes. It's gonna take you, it's just how we can have water's one of the main.
Yeah, water is the big issue.
Well, I didn't know, are the
I
pipes
can't believe we lost them.
They are already there, because
Only to
Tell you right around there, once you're looking, okay.
Yeah, we immediately just.
I'm hungry, but I'm not.
Yeah, I know.
I'm at least focused.
So to speak. That was hilarious.
Another thing was.
Feel better?
You killed me sometimes.
We are on the record.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to recall Mr. Baracco.
The road, they divided it at Lloyd's, one deeper this way of the creek, and that side's going back out east to Bayshore. Just how we're looking at it. But you can drive in and out.
Okay, can we have silence now? We have testimony.
Mr. Brock, you testified before, you're still under oath. I want to go back and revisit the issue that Mr. DiFilippo testified, that it's not so much the conveyance of the creek, but it's the conveyance into the wetland. Now, I did notice on page 4 of the environmental resource permit that off-site flows were analyzed and that there's limited, only, if this is right, 8.4 CFS coming from the north.
Correct. In our surface water management report that was submitted and reviewed and approved by the South Florida Water Management District, that particular conveyance was studied in detail. The discharge from the north, from Del Webb and the other projects that we discussed was analyzed, and the pipe size of 42-inch diameter.
Sir, can you step outside, please?
You analyzed in the pipe size.
Of 42-inch diameter was reviewed and approved and accepted by the South Florida Water Management District. So that particular conveyance itself was analyzed in detail.
So is it going to be upgraded to a 42, or the existing condition is going to remain?
The environmental resource permit includes a 42-inch culvert. So when we come in for a development order, that 42-inch pipe would be there.
So you have to install it?
Yes, and
I'm
what
trying
they're
to clarify, what improvements are you making to the situation by virtue of this project?
Oh, here, I'll get it to you.
You know which one I'm going through, Dirk? In listening to the testimony earlier, it was determined that this is the concern of the staff, and so the flow in to the north was analyzed by us and reviewed by the South Florida Water Management District coming here, and that included this pipe coming from the wetland into Samville. That was determined that that should be a 42-inch pipe.
Which is bigger than the pipe that's there now?
There is no pipe now. That's the open swale, the man-made swale that staff referred to earlier.
And is that 24-inch pipe going to convey, how is that going to improve the situation?
42-inch pipe, and it will convey the water coming under Bayshore Road and which falls within the wetland. So that's this 42-inch pipe that's proposed from the control structure to Samville will convey all off-site flows, and there is no flow from the site adding to that at that point.
Right, but the testimony was that once that comes through.
Wait, you're jumping ahead. It's my question next. I'm trying to address Mr. DiFilippo's concern relative to condition 6. And the next question is, there's a lot of testimony where the hearing examiner, I think, was headed about that ditch along Samville and who's supposed to maintain it.
Well, let me back up. This concern that staff had was this route here, and that is the route that was studied by the Water Management District and accepted by the Water Management District. Earlier, I think everyone's concerned about what happens when the water is on Samville, leaves Samville, goes to the south to the river. That is a concern, that it must be maintained. I was talking to one of the residents earlier, and he noted that approximately 2 years ago, the county did go in and maintain that outfall, and an improvement was noticed, and then it grew up again. So that really has nothing to do with this project. That issue is there. not only for the residents, that issue would be there for this project because maintenance of that outfall is certainly required.
But not by this project.
Correct. That maintenance of the outfall, in my opinion, is definitely required with or without this project. And I think what we've heard so far from all the residents really indicates that.
Okay, let me ask you a question, because a lot of people said we're going to increase the amount of water that leaves this site. Can you address that?
Sure. Just because there's impervious area doesn't necessarily mean that the discharge is increased coming from the site. The reason for that is if you look at all these lakes, particularly the large lake in the center, those lakes are excavated and they provide storage for the stormwater, which is not there today. So all the runoff from the site is directed into the proposed lakes. It's attenuated or stored or slowed down in those lakes, and it only leaves the site at a controlled rate. In this particular case, the discharge coming from the site is limited to 83 cubic feet per second per square mile, and that discharge rate is established by Lee County in the county's, I'm looking for the proper name of the study, Lee County Surface Water Management Study for the area. So that discharge was established by the county based upon a study of this exact area.
And under the South Florida Applicant's Handbook, the post-development runoff cannot exceed the pre-development, is that right?
It's limited to pre-development and or whatever discharge is established by any municipalities.
And when the county does those basin studies, typically it reduces your amount you can discharge, regardless of what the existing discharge rate is.
Correct. And I'm just looking at my notes. The proper name of that study is Lee County Surface Water Management Master Plan.
Surface water management.
Master Plan.
And I'm going to talk about the monitoring condition proposed by staff. Earlier I said condition 6. I was really, should have been 7. The monitoring condition 6. Did you have the opportunity to hear Mr. DiFilippo testify?
Yes, I believe he said he was concerned with some of the commercial uses.
When you do, well, let me ask you this. Are you required to do a water quality analysis for the ERP?
Yes.
And I know it used to be called the Harvey Harper analysis, but I think it's gotten more stringent since then. Is that right?
It's referred to as a nutrient loading analysis.
And when you look at that, does it include an analysis of nutrients and other constituents?
Yes, the analysis basically looks at water quality coming from the project based upon existing conditions and existing land uses and compares that to water quality leaving the site with proposed land uses. In this particular case, this nutrient loading analysis was analyzed with a post-construction condition of single family, multifamily, and commercial. And the way those runoffs are determined are much like you mentioned with the transportation numbers earlier, in that Dr. Harper was referred to earlier. He did the first study, and they studied runoff from many different land uses and summarized that runoff, and that was the basis of what nutrients can be expected to be leaving a developed site under developed conditions.
So let me ask you a question. Who's qualified to do that kind of analysis? An engineer, hydrologist, geologist? I mean,
In my opinion, it would be a professional engineer registered in the state of Florida.
is a planner qualified to do that type of analysis?
I'm not a planner, but I wouldn't think so.
I'm not, I know she's giving me the look, but. And so, having done the analysis, and it's reviewed by engineers, I presume, at the district,
Yes,
and it was determined that this project is not going to violate the state water quality standards.
correct. In essence, it was determined that the water quality leaving the site in the developed condition will be something greater than then no net loss. In other words, there'll be some improvement to water quality leaving the site. I don't, and that's quantified, I just don't know what that number is off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions for Mr. Baracco. I don't, Madam Hearing Examiner, if you do.
All right, Mr. Baracco, you heard all the comments that were made by members of the public. Do you feel as though you covered all the issues that they raised? I believe they also raised a concern about the, and I know you have an outfall into the creek spreading out after it leaves the site. Do you have any information you'd like to share with the public on that subject?
Sure, I think that goes back to the maintenance from Sandville to the river. I think they were talking about that the discharge that's coming through this project crosses Sandville and then starts spreading out because it's not making its way to the river. And that goes to the required maintenance from that point at Sandville to the river. And again, in my conversations, it didn't surprise me at all. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what I would expect, is that if the county went out there and made some improvements and they saw an improvement, but then over time that improvement was lost because the vegetation grows back and there's a lot of friction associated with that vegetation, particularly in a system like this where there is shallow flow in a ditch or a little bit more wider flow.
Thank you. I did have a question. As you know, Sandville Road came up a lot of times, and why are we only improving the road from our access points to Bayshore? I believe you touched on it before. Can you explain that again?
Sure. We looked at the access required for the project, and consistent with the Land Development Code, it was determined that Sandville should be improved to county standards from each access point to Sandville Road, I'm sorry, to Bayshore Road.
Okay.
Does the project access meet collector road separation standards from Sandville on the west?
That's a Ted question, but he's shaking his head yes.
Okay, thank you.
If we don't have any more questions for Mr. Baracco, I'm going to recall Mr. Inge.
Ron Inge for the record.
Mr. Inge, I know you deal with a lot of the financial aspects and performance for projects. Will this project be required to pay road impact fees?
Yes, it will. Every unit, single family or multifamily, will have to pay impact fees. I believe the current single family impact fees are right around $5,500 a unit. I don't recall offhand what the multifamily impact fees are. In addition, the commercial property will also have to pay impact fees per square foot of development for it as well.
And Sandville is a public road. Is it your understanding that the impact fees, the road impact fees, are to address your impact on the public road system?
I believe that's why they were created in the first place, so that you would be able to address road needs through the use of funds from new development.
And most of the project traffic is projected to be on Bayshore, but that is a state road. Is it your understanding that the county shares their road impact fees with the state?
I don't think they do.
Therefore, the only road that's impacted in this case would be the county road.
That's correct.
Do you have an idea, just a ballpark, of what those impact fees would be?
Somewhere between 1.7 and 2.1 million based on the number of units.
And you've heard the public today submit that the road's bad now and we should fix it for them. I know you're a numbers guy, so I'm guessing you took a look at what that might be. Is that like a $50 improvement, a $500 improvement? What would that county improvement cost approximately?
The approximate cost of widening that road from our two entrances and making necessary swales, putting the sidewalks, all that, is somewhere between $700,000 and $850,000.
So the road's impact fees are more than enough to...
They're about double what the cost would be, yes.
And I believe, in your experience in the development world, recognize that if an exaction doesn't meet the dual rational nexus test, an applicant's not required to pay for it. Is that your understanding?
Absolutely.
And is your understanding, based on your knowledge of this project, that this project has a sufficient dual rational nexus to that, the improvement outside of our access points to require this project to pay that kind of money to fix it?
No, we wouldn't be required to pay that kind of money to fix that because that would be against the law, as I understand it.
And I know you're a conscientious person, so you tend to like to explore issues ahead of time. Perchance, did you explore how their problem, not your problem, their problem might be solved with LEDOT?
We did. Early in analyzing and reviewing this project, we had the opportunity to meet with Lee County DOT and several other members of staff about issues that might be addressed by our project. And Sandville Road, as much as it was with the folks that spoke today, is an issue and was an issue. And so what we talked to Lee DOT about was when we come in to develop our project, working in some cooperative manner with them, given the fact that there will be impact fees ultimately paid on this, to figure out how that Lee DOT could work with us to improve Sandville from our entrance to our entrance, to try to make it a seamless project as we go through and do that somewhat jointly, if at all possible. So it is on, the widening of Sandville Road is on the radar screen of DOT, and our discussing it with them further highlighted it, I believe.
And if this project's approved, would you continue to work with LEDOT to see if they can do the improvements at the same time you do, or whatever mechanism there is to make
That would
it?
make a lot of sense to do, yes.
Okay.
And we would.
Now, I think the big concern was expressed about the fact that the commercial folks are going to want to go west potentially, and that they're going to use Stanville to go west, and you heard the testimony. I can't remember the gentleman's name, and I think he left.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes. He made a suggestion about a pork chop. Since some folks thought that was food, can you explain what that is and how that works?
Yes, I think the gentleman brought up a point, if I may, of course, that at our access from the commercial, instead of allowing both turning movements from the commercial going left or right, that we build a concrete separator to direct the traffic leaving the commercial site to go northward on Sandville and be prohibited from going southward on Sandville. And we'd be agreeable to doing that until such time as Sandville Road is improved. So if Sandville Road is not improved, when we come in for a development order, then we'll put in the pork chop or whatever term you use to direct traffic through the concrete exit point to go northward on Sandville Road. I think that would help solve that problem.
Or such other mechanism or
Yeah,
bollards or striping
I use pork chop as a generic term. It may be some other way of separating and directing the traffic.
Okay.
But some way to restrict those.
Suggesting a condition?
Yes, I believe we'd be agreeable to that. Unless Sandville Road is improved, then we wouldn't have that. But if we come in for a development order on the commercial parcel prior to Sandville Road being improved, we'll build a turn movement restrictive mechanism to direct the project traffic leaving the commercial to go northward on Sandville and not southward.
Okay, I will invite you to.
We'll draft something.
that.
Sure.
Okay. I believe that's all the questions I have for Mr. Hinge. I would like to recall Mr. Baracco. He has additional information to share.
All right, and I would like Mr. Trish to come back up.
Madam Hearing Examiner, when Mr. Inge was speaking, I was able to look at the analysis that was done for that 42-inch pipe, and if I could read the conclusion of that analysis, which was, again, submitted by our firm and approved by the Water Management District. And I'll just read two parts of it. This is regarding the 42-inch pipe that we were speaking of earlier. The rational method to formulate a flow using the 100-year IDF curve for intensity was used. So that was used to determine the flow. And the conclusion is, in conclusion, a 42-inch RCP was selected to convey the peak flow. So I wanted to make sure that I got that into the record, that that 42-inch pipe was designed, reviewed, and approved to pass the peak flow from that 100-year event.
Can you show me where that pipe would be installed on the site plan?
This is the pipe that conveys water from north to south, comes into hydrates this wetland. And then when the wetland is hydrated, it overflows into a box here, and that box has a 42-inch pipe that goes to the south and discharges into the Sanville right away.
Okay, so the pipe ends at the right-of-way, and the water that's coming out of it goes into the ditch.
Correct. In the existing condition, it's in a shallow swale that we heard staff talk about, and that would be replaced by this pipe, and that pipe was analyzed as I just mentioned.
Okay, thank you. And Jennifer, can you tell me whether, is this going to be an age-restricted community? Because I don't have an attachment saying where the school board evaluated the student generation. So,
Oh, we should have it in there. Yeah, it's not intended to be an age-restricted. We'll find that and get that to you.
is it age-restricted?
No, it is not.
Okay, so I would like a copy of that exhibit, please. And if it is not age-restricted, I don't have the benefit of that document in front of me, but what arrangements in the design are being made for a school bus stop to serve the project? If you're basically on a multi-lane arterial and on a collector. So if you could give that some thought, I would appreciate that. Ted, thank you.
Yes.
Are you here to answer questions from Neil or me?
From you.
Okay. I just want to direct you to your TIS. You have a figure A1, which is a trip distribution
Yes.
and site traffic assignment. Can you explain for me and the public what these numbers mean? I see you've got from the commercial pod.
Yes.
There's like a number in parentheses and then a number that's not in parentheses with directional arrows.
Yes, those are the turning movements. The numbers that are not in parentheses are the AM peak hour volumes, and the parentheses numbers are the PM peak hour volumes. So those are the turning movements. The dash lines are the access drives into the project. So you can see the 3 dash lines are the access drives, and then the access drives, and then at the intersections of Samville and Bayshore.
Okay, so I'm confused by the one arrow on the far east side that seems to indicate that traffic is going to turn west when we know the creek is there and there's no interconnection between the residential and the commercial. Can you clarify that for me?
Are you looking at figure A1? I'm trying to figure out what you're looking at.
A1.
Those are the, again, as I indicated in my earlier testimony, those volumes are high because I assumed a grocery anchored tenant. It's a very high volume because a grocery store generates a very high volume of traffic. So that's the right turn volume into the commercial. That's simply the turn volume into the retail.
Into or out of?
It'd be the right turn in.
Is the picture on the screen relevant to what we're talking about?
No.
That's the right turn in that you're looking at pointing to.
So coming down Samville.
That's
turning
coming down
right
Samville, turning right into the project.
into the project.
Right. And then the two pointing to the right are the left out and the right out, turning onto Samville. But
That's
again, as Mr. Inge indicated, if we were agreed to a condition to restrict the right out, then all those would be left out to go back to Bayshore, if that condition were.
So instead
to
of
be implemented.
122.14,
Right.
149.17,
They would all be left out. Yeah, that was it.
okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yep.
And then if we could switch over to the residential access onto Samville, I want to make sure I understand. There's a number 49 and then 33 in parentheses.
Right.
It seemed to show a left onto Samville.
Yes.
As if it's heading, I imagine, to the commercial pod rather than to.
Possibly, yeah, they could be going to the commercial or going around to turn. Again, these are the worst case volumes.
Right,
Again,
it's
that
assuming they're going
30,000.
to a supermarket.
Right.
I get that. I just want to understand what the direction means.
Yeah, those are the lefts out, right in, right out of that side access drive onto Samville.
So absent a major attractor on that corner,
Yes, those would be significantly lower.
okay. Well, I appreciate the volunteering of a directional exit out of the commercial section if by some chance Samville is not improved by then. Because I do see that is, you know, people will use that, and the studies even show that people will make a left out there or right out there. So hopefully the county will improve the road corridor long before that parcel is developed. But I appreciate that offer.
Thank you.
I don't.
Is there any other testimony you'd like to put into the record to clarify anything raised by the public?
No, I believe I thought the primary issues were drainage and traffic.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to staff now and see if they want to supplement in any way. Dirk, is there any additional clarification you would like to provide on the record based on the comments from the public? Or do you feel satisfied that the applicant has addressed?
I did just want to make one point of clarification because impact fees were discussed. The impact fees are addressing a more regional issue. Those aren't specifically assigned to Samville Road. So I didn't want to I wanted to make sure there was not some miscommunication about how those monies will be allocated. It's not an obligation of Lee County to put those on Samville. I can attest also, though, that Mr. Inch was right. We have been coordinating with DOT. They have been in meetings understanding that there is an issue with the roadway.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's circle back to what the record needs to be supplemented with.
So we need the revised PowerPoint, the updated executed ag affidavit. We need the condition on the traffic calming direction. Those are the three things I had.
Then the school board,
Oh, the school board, I'm sorry, I forgot
board
that one.
capacity letter, which we would have, or you would have, and then,
You could coordinate that.
Yes.
Submittal.
yeah, we'll make a joint submittal.
And if you want to offer any clarification regarding the provision of a bus stop. And then,
And I did want to put one thing on the record, too. I don't know if there's going to pass, but there is a Senate Bill 1240. There are folks that believe that the county's preempted on a lot of issues. This will make this absolutely clear if it gets approved. Water management preemption. If this passes, the county may not adopt any law, regulation, rule, policy relating to water quality, water quantity, pollution control, among other things. So I'm hopeful that we will delete that condition, but if we don't, I don't want to and this passes, I don't want to be subject to something that would violate the Florida statutes.
right, well, usually that's not how it works, so I don't think you have to worry about that. And then one last thing I want to clarify, the condition as written, the agricultural condition is fine, right? There doesn't have to make a change based on.
We would
an
like to change it
executed
the way we
version.
asked for it before, relative to the vegetation removal permit, but in a prior hearing.
Amend the code, Neil, and then.
I know, and I've asked, I just
I
didn't get
wish
it
you
done
well.
yet.
Amend the code. They're usually receptive to things like that, so I just urge you to do that.
But you were very clear in the Homestead case that was the path, and so we didn't ask again, because we figured you'd tell us the same thing.
Right.
But on the off chance you change your mind, we would.
Okay, so I'm going to leave the condition as is. I look forward to supplementing the record with that exhibit because I need to attach it. And how long would you like to keep the record open to supply this information?
That's a Jennifer and Ron question.
We go till Monday?
All right, well, why don't we go till Friday?
Oh, that's.
I mean,
even-
if you can get
Not
it to
this
me
one, next
before then, the sooner you,
Not
I will
tomorrow.
tell you that I am all caught up, so the sooner you get it to me, the sooner I can work on this case. So,
Wow.
So what's the date for Friday? I took the calendar into my office after the last hearing.
14th, I believe, it's 14th.
Okay.
Numbers guy.
April 14, by end of business that day, and you are welcome to supply everything before then. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes this hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, this building goes up and down, I was just trying to like.